what you said. Oh, okay, no problem. All right, what do we got? All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to start with the pledge and then we'll start with the meeting. The pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right. Feet never reach the ground. All righty. We're in a business session. Okay, I'm gonna ask if there are any announcements. To my left, I'm thinking none. To my right, I'm thinking none, correct? Just want to remind the public that, can't hear it. Just want to remind the public that it's President's Day this coming Monday, so all municipal offices and businesses, I'm sorry, all municipal buildings are closed. Enjoy the 3-day weekend. Don't hesitate to shop downtown in your day off. And I think that's it for our announcements today. So we're gonna get started with the meeting.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Our first item on the agenda is an update on our road diet, specific to plans for Havel Street. And we have Jared Anderson from Creighton Manning and Paul Frioli, our village engineer, is trying to get on to. He's having some technical difficulties. But I think we can get started. Subsequent to when we brought the road diet design to the board last time, there was a request by the board that we come back with a little bit more detail on plans for Havel Street. So as you may remember, we had talked about adding additional parking in the area right off of Route 9 by Havel Street, where parking already exists. And then looking at different options to mitigate some of the traffic congestion that we have on the lower end of the street. So with that, I'd like to ask Jared to begin his presentation, and we do have Paul with us too. So.
Thank you, Karen. Hopefully you can all hear me. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board, members of the administration for having us back this month. And we're here to elaborate on some concepts regarding parking at Havel Street that we worked with Paul and the administration on. So there's several ideas here, but they're really just two main concepts. The first is you would keep your two-way street, but you would eliminate the parking essentially between Highland and Sabrina Lane. The first leg is Sabrina Lane.
Is there any way to expand this?
Yeah, Jamie,
it's really difficult to see this. This is a lot of stuff on one slide.
Jamie, is it possible to zoom in more? I think that really we want to see the actual street diagram as opposed to the verbiage at the top. So if you really zoom in on the street itself, that probably would be most helpful.
So that in its simplest form, this is really just putting a double yellow line straight down the middle of the street and adding some no parking signs from basically Nolan's Auto to Sabrina Lane. What this does is it establishes a safe two-way passage. Now you have a two-way street to begin with. However, as you may well know, it's a bottleneck anytime two cars are coming opposing each other. Someone has to give, someone has to pull up onto the sidewalk or into a driveway or something to get by. And that compounds a safety issue with your emergency access, particularly with the schools on the top of the hill. So so what it does is that it improves that emergency access both ways, toward the school and away from the school, and for all users of the roadway. Now, what the chart that's not fully in view, but what it's saying is the parking that's going to be added in Highland Avenue and the side of the hill that we explained at our last meeting, that is essentially a net plus of 13 spaces. And how that breaks down is assuming you eliminated all on-street parking on those two legs of Highland. Worst case, you could build up to 33 spaces in the hillside of the hill, and therefore you would be yielding 13 more than you have now. Now, you have space for approximately 33 vehicles on Havel Street. It's just a coincidence, the 33. So by removing all 33 spaces, but gaining 13, you're left with a negative 20. But that does not paint a fair picture of the option here, because we're putting parking on Route 9 up top. That's going to be accessible to Havel Street with a short walk. Those spaces we've discussed, and that could be time-based, so that they're more curtailed for the people that actually live here that would use them. We could also look at putting back some of those spaces on the two short segments of North Highland. That amounts to about 7 or 8 that you would get back. And then to the right of the graphic, where Sabrina Lane, the horseshoe of Sabrina Lane is, that by moving that double yellow line over a bit, you can actually get back all of those spaces. The negative 20, you can get back 20. You could probably get up to 23, 24 spaces. There's some breaks for hydrants and things that we need to keep open. But besides that, by shifting that double yellow line over, eliminating the time restriction for the overnight parking, you can get that all back. So while it looks bad on the surface with this negative 20, you get all of that parking back within 1 block of the affected area. It also improves the snow plowing operation for DPW. That's just an added bonus for having the street open and not having to deal with parked cars. So yes, the negatives are that folks do lose the parking closest to their homes, and they do have to walk but it is a short distance. And it's pretty much the compromise that is needed to make this option work. And then on the next slide, we have what is called the one-way concept. And a few of us met on site, myself, Paul, Karen, Maddie, police department, and some reps from DPW. And we kind of went a little bit back and forth on which way for one way. And we kind of came to the conclusion that one way toward the schools is the better of the two, simply for favoring emergency access toward the schools. And what these small little painted hatched areas are doing is it's helping with some of these driveway access points, giving them a better shot at not having a parked car directly next to their driveway. This was sort of ascertained at the request of those who were present at the meeting in the field, and it does make sense to try to cordon off so that those pulling out have a little bit better of a shot getting out. So I'm also looking at this on my screen here. So again, safe passage in the one direction, and it does improve emergency access. There is a net gain in parking because you're not losing all of the spaces on Havel Street. And then so you're gaining those additional spaces on North Highland, the plus 13. You're only losing a few spaces due to these small hatched areas. So the net result is plus 8, plus all of the parking, again, you're going to get from the Sabrina Lane section and then the up on Route 9. And then a third idea that came up very recently within the last few days in a conversation with village manager, assistant village manager, and our project team was, and it's just an option, it's a concept that you could formally paint stripes. And what the idea, it mimics what is intended to happen up on Route 9 by providing a box, an X box, if you will, that is intended to be an empty space. Don't park here, because that can be utilized for police car and ambulance, or simply even for fire access, making it a little easier. Again, it's just a concept, and what it does is when you formalize the spaces and you put those boxes in, you do lose a little bit more parking, but it just so happens to work out that the total change is 0 because you're adding 13, but you're losing 13 on Hamel. So plus, again, all of the additional space you're getting within one block. So yes, some folks will still have to walk. And the biggest con about both of these one-way options is if you're coming in and you live here, you do have to go around to Van Cortlandt to get out. Emergency vehicles could probably go against the one-way in an emergency situation where they do need to get in there or get out. But generally speaking, the big downside to the one-way is, again, having to go around. And that's a bit of a distance for folks who live right on the end here. So there'd be a little bit of an enforcement, I would say, issue just to make sure folks don't cheat that. What else? That's really the gist of it. I know, and I'm maybe turn it over to Paul.
Thanks, Jared. I just want to append one of the things Jared said with respect to what the one-way options do. They basically take away the interaction that traffic would have pulling out onto Highland Avenue from Havel. However, as tricky as that is now, coming into the hollow, that's really going to be thwarted by, that trickiness is going to be thwarted by the road diet. And thinking that these projects are going to hopefully be relatively concurrent, I'm not sure that's an issue anymore. So the two-way option where you would still have traffic coming off of Havel, turning on Highland Avenue, will now be done via a traffic signal. And based on the traffic counts, there really wouldn't be a backup issue in that thoroughfare, which I think might be a better option and service to the residents in this corridor versus what happens now. If you make it a one-way, it's not just the Havel folks that have to go all the way up and around, but it's everybody on Jenkins, and it's everybody on Sabrina, and it's everyone on Upper Havel, and no longer have the option of coming down and getting to Route 9 that way. They have to go up and around and come down Van Cortlandt. So that's something to consider too when we talk about the overall impact of the project. I also want to, if you just want to scroll back up to the top, Jared, to that first option. I know Jared spent some time talking about it, but go up to the chart a little bit. The -20 space calculation, I know he softened it a little bit by saying, he was generally conservative with the spaces that he was potentially losing if he engineered it and was to the letter with regard to the spaces on that Highland extension and on Havel. However, I think the true traffic count on Havel, because of all the curb cuts, and let's just say the expanded curb cuts, because I know Jared used a very specific curb cut in the calculation, but there's some wider curb cuts, particularly back by the industrial area, and some hydrants in the corridor there that, he included, but I think that's a very maximum count that he used there for that corridor, which is the responsible thing to do, but still not maybe totally indicative of what's out there. And on Highland Avenue, Jared and I also talked before the meeting that if we cut a little further into the hill, as Jared said, we might be able to maintain and formalize some of those spaces that are across the street, if you will, from the areas to be cut into to create the off-street parking. So I think there's things we can do when coupled with the parking that's going to be added on Highland Avenue and the parking that we're going to maximize on Upper Havel that really offset the -20 that you're seeing now. I think we could work around getting that to a net zero, which would make that concept, more conducive to, more appealing to the residents rather.
Okay. Is that it, Paul?
No, that was it for me. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to start from my left with some questions. Thank you for that presentation and for responding to some of the inquiries that the board had made in the last presentation with more detail, and for going out there physically for everybody as a team to actually look at the street, make sure they catch all the issues. Trustee Fritchie has some
Yeah.
comments or questions.
This is to Paul. You made reference of a traffic signal at Havel?
At Aqueduct. That
At
intersect.
Aqueduct.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
I just meant just down the way would make it easier to pull out from Havel. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yes, that I misrepresented that. It's really just down the way, but I was trying to imply that signal and the fact that it's going to be one lane with calmed traffic and parking there, it should make it relatively easy to pull out onto Havel in either direction.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, great. Anybody else have questions or comments? Pat, was that you saying yes, or you guys? Okay.
So if you live on this stretch, I don't see a good answer for you if you live on this stretch. You're either gonna have to walk more, which if you have a disability or you have a handicap parking sticker might be an issue. People are gonna have to drive all the way around to get out. I mean, I kind of prefer the two-way just because I think it's a lot to ask people to completely have to drive. There's a lot of neighborhoods there. It's a lot of households you're affecting. And I just don't think it's something we should do without really thinking about how it will inconvenience people who live on the street. And I know it's an issue. I try to avoid that stretch just because it is so narrow. But I don't really do, how does this, were you talking about parking spaces on the old stretch of North Highland there that goes right along there? There'll be spaces there too, right?
So the old stretch where the green space is now is where we're looking to cut into that hill and create off-street parking. We're also going to be creating parallel parking on the new design of Route 9 proper, Highland Avenue, that don't exist there now.
Well, have we talked to the people who live around there and who would be affected? Are we gonna have some sort of engagement with them?
I have not had house-to-house engagement
Oh,
with any.
I'm not expecting you to do that, but some sort of public engagement.
No, outside of these public meetings, I haven't made any public outreach.
I mean, I don't live there. It's hard for me to say what would be worse. Because I think if you live there, neither option is great. Though I understand the need to try to figure this out.
And it depends on where you live, which option will be more appealing.
Right.
So that's very clear. We did, did talk to some of the local business owners who were supportive, generally speaking, especially of putting the additional parking along that side of North Highland. Look, the challenge right now is the street is not passable at a certain point if you have two cars coming in opposite directions. And it is not something that we're doing for any cosmetic reason. It is a life safety issue. So it is going to be a hard decision. Before we go to the community and do more community engagement, which obviously we will have to let people know what's going on, we really wanted to take this opportunity. It is something that does require some real consideration, and we wanted to make sure the board was aware of the options before we start refining those options.
You know, you are gonna have someone who can't walk that distance for whatever reason, if they're disabled or in a wheelchair or whatever. So I don't know if there's any way to get around that,
They
but
couldn't have a family member pick them up?
come,
Don't you have that now?
what?
You have.
Well, no, if you
have
could
the
park in
same
front of your
issue.
house, you're not gonna be able to do that anymore if it becomes two-way.
Yeah, so.
Right, no, I'm sure there are all sorts of like contingencies
The
here, but
likelihood- Just based on now, typically if somebody's handicapped, they will request a spot when they, so. But I think you raise a very good point that,
There will-
it's not only, if you are handicapped, but you went to the grocery store. And now you're trying to bring your groceries and things like that. These are all things that we talked about with the pros and the cons, and we really have two things that have pros and cons to them. So, because I do think that whatever we decide has implications for people who live on the street, and the implications are vastly different depending where you live on the
oh,
street.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you live on this lower stretch near the North Island,
You'd be
you
better
know.
off on the lower stretch, actually.
well, you'd be closer to the new
Yeah.
parking, but if you live up in the neighborhoods, you don't park on the street there. You
You'd have
park
to
in your
go up and
driveway.
Park where it becomes wider.
You
either
know,
way.
these neighborhoods have driveways and stuff.
Yeah.
This section down here, they don't have any driveways.
So,
I'm sorry, go
just
ahead.
to put it in, I was trying to do with my little fingers. What's the number of feet here? The whole distance of this whole thing that we're talking about? Paul,
The Havel stretch we're
Yes.
talking about?
talking about,
Jared, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the Havel stretch is approximately 500 feet.
so 500
Little-
feet.
Little more. I'm
600
actually measuring it now. You talking about between Highland and Sabrina?
or
No,
about
just
this slide that we're looking at, that we're discussing this evening.
Yeah, it's about 700 feet.
Okay,
To stretch.
but the impacted stretch from the actual beginning of Havel itself, where the yellow line you see there, and from where we widen it back on Sabrina is maybe a little less, because the people on the from Highland Avenue still will have parking and two-way access.
right. Okay, well, I mean, this has been going on for decades, and it gets worse and worse every few years. And it's not going to get better if we do nothing. So that's a fact. And it's a bad stretch. No matter what we do, it won't be easy. If it were easy, this would have been done years ago. So we're gonna have to figure some of these situations out. A house may have a handicapped person today. There are a lot of renters here. So tomorrow they may not have, another house might. So we can't just give them a spot. We have to figure out what we do under different situations. I like the idea from last time that you guys figure out a way to add 30 spots. I think that's the big deal here. Although we do have to discuss how much it's going to cost everybody in the community to do that, because that's not in the original proposal that we looked at. This was an additive last time you presented that was new to the board. But sort of thinking out of the box idea here that helps, I think, everybody involved here. Not ideal, not right in front of your house, but certainly close, not perfect though. You have any other questions about, okay, do you have any questions?
Thank you for presenting this. My sense is that the two-way is probably going to be the move for a variety of reasons, but I guess my question is around the homes that are on the southern side of the street, if they are the ones that are primarily parking there, because I do see cars on the northern side that look like they are parked in the spaces and there are just fewer lots there. So is it mostly the homes on the southern end that are impacted?
I think that's probably a fair assumption. I would make the same assumption. I think that the parking that's in front of those homes now is kind of hodgepodge. As you can see, you have some front yard parking, you have some commercial front yard parking going on there. All which facilitated by extraordinary curb cuts, including, the first few buildings in. So, you would think that those cars are tied to those parcels. I'm sure there's multifamily issues there where you might not have the parking based on some of those lots. And those are the ones that are maybe coming across the street or up the street or somewhere else. And then the cars that you see a few houses in on the southern side really don't have access to their backyards based on the lot lines. And therefore are forced to park on the street. And there's zero setback there, so they're right to the sidewalk, those houses. So there's no place for them to pull off as is the option on the north side of the road. So, yeah, I think I wouldn't want to put a percentage to it, but just for conversation purposes, I think that at least half the people that are parking on that southern side are probably parking at a residence that is tied to the car.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for me.
So again, thank you for all this. Pat, nothing, okay. So for me, this has been just a problem area. School buses, vehicles. I've driven in there and there was no way, and I drive a small Chevy. There was somebody coming across me. I think it was actually a police car. We couldn't pass each other. He had to go on the curb between a car so I can move. And I have a small car. I'm not driving a van. I'm not driving a commercial vehicle. I'm not like a parent with 4 screaming kids in the back trying to get to school on time, which is really who's using this. We've had a lot of complaints from parents. We've had a lot of requests to make it absolutely like, no parking on either side. Once there's a little rain, it's also a hill. It's like a little bit, it goes up. It's not, it's not the easiest topography. People double parking. Once somebody does that, you basically can't even go up that road. So for me, the 2-way is not a realistic option. The 1-way, I think, clears a lot of the issues. Not perfect, because none of this is perfect. I'm looking, this is a daytime picture. This was taken in the daytime. There's like illegal stuff going on here. The parking, half the stuff's against our codes already. You've got all those cars with a home. There is like commercial vehicles being parked on these things. Some of this is also what people are using these housing for. There's a lot of stuff going on here, which we don't really try to come down on because we appreciate that people are living their life. The houses are very tight, so you do the best you can, but it's really, really dangerous. I think the 1-way gives you net, according to this analysis, more parking for this neighborhood. Well, certainly people live in cities, walk more than 500 feet to get to anything they want. It's not a totally unreasonable ask because you're also giving the community, I think, more parking. I do like the idea of creating more space between the cars because I do think on such a road that where buses are passing, all that, I think when people coming out of the different driveways, they will hit the car there. Although if you live there long enough, you probably got to be a pretty good driver by now. I don't know why you guys chose one side versus the other. There must be a reason. I don't. Oh, because it's just because of the way it is currently. Oh, okay. So there was a reason. That was the reason. Okay. We're going to have some rules. There's going to be a lot of police enforcement. There's going to have to be, because once you create a little more space between cars, somebody's squeezing in there and pretending they're like parking and putting, double blinking lights, because somehow people think if you put a double blinking, you're allowed to park illegally in the United States. But apparently that's like not really a rule. So the police are going to have to be there more. We're going to have to do a lot better with the signage and all that. Ideally, there should be no cars parked in this area, and it should only be the walkable, except for maybe some handicap exceptions, but I don't think that's realistic. Way too many people living in these small houses. It's a different issue, but let's deal with the reality that we have. So for me, a good compromise is a one-way done as well as we can, creating spots. There's also, I think, Maddie, gonna have to be enforcement about, that the commercial folks can't take all of this public space for their cars that they're working on and all of that. They have properties of their own. There's gonna have to be some understanding of that. Because otherwise they're taking up space for commercial vehicles that they're not supposed to be doing. It's not the actual residents. And we want businesses to thrive. So I think there's gonna have to be some rules. I don't know where we are in the process, though. I think the hardship here is actually not for the folks who are just living there and all that, because the folks who are living there have also complained about how dangerous it is, and when you walk with a kid, how dangerous that area is. I actually think it's people who have to drive now all the way around to get to wherever they're going. I actually think they're the ones that are going to complain the most, the people going to school, because these folks are going to sit there and go, okay, not ideal, could be a little safer. I see advantages. I think the complaints will come from the people, but I mean, we have to do something about this road. And I think that the idea here, Maddie and Paul, was that this only gets done in conjunction with the Route 9. You're not doing this first. This gets done either simultaneously or after, am I right? Because doing this
Yeah.
first without the extra parking,
No.
that is a burden.
This is kind of without the extra parking, it really becomes even much more challenging. So this is, it could be disaggregated from the road diet. Like we can go ahead with the road diet. This will have, and Paul, maybe you can talk, because when we were in the field, we did talk about this a little bit, about how we can treat this, as an extension, certainly, of the road diet, but not necessarily a condition of the road diet.
Okay.
Sure, thank you. So the state is aware of our wish to create the parking in their right of way in the green space that exists now between Havel and then, between Highland Avenue and the old North Highland Avenue extension. So they're aware of that. It's part of our scope that we presented to them and intend to include it in the capital project. The traffic patterns on Havel Street, so be it, they do want to know when they explore the traffic counts and the traffic patterns that we're impacting. We will eventually tell them, once the board decides which option they choose, what they can expect to come onto Havel at that point in the road. Whether any traffic from Havel Street is going to be tributary to Highland Avenue is to be determined. If you make it one way, obviously, it's not, other than that little extension of where the folks park near Mantra Auto and the houses on the other side of Havel, but you won't get the traffic flow from the rest of Havel. If we keep it two-way, you will. So that's something we will eventually have to tell the state and decide. The actual work associated with this is something that the village is going to do on their own once you're outside the scope of the additional parking that we were looking to create. I will say that regardless of the option that the board chooses, one way or two way, I think that the additional parking that we can create in that hillside on either side of where Havel Street enters Highland Avenue will probably be a welcomed benefit, because it does maximize that area and will provide additional parking, 33 spaces, and whether those spaces are going to be offsetting spaces that we displace on Havel, or those spaces are just 33 new parking spaces, it's still 33 spaces that we're adding to an area that is pressed for parking right now. And you're right, Mayor, the parking that is going on there now, whether they're parking in the front yards or parking on the curbs or parking next to buildings, or, is not really, it's hodgepodge, and signage and enforcement will definitely need to be stepped up regardless of what option we end up choosing here.
So thank you, Paul. So just for the public for people who look at the videos, I just want to reiterate. We often talk about houses and parking in front of the houses. Public streets are public streets. Actually, no public street anywhere, certainly not in New York State, belongs in front of to the people who live in a house. You live in a house, you're supposed to have actually parking on your property. Or if you don't have, you have to park a public street. But that public street, anybody from anywhere can park there. It's a public street. You live somewhere, the area and the curb in front of your house isn't yours. That belongs to the public. We have people in neighborhoods all over the place saying, you know, that's my parking across from my house. No, it isn't. It's a public street. That's the way it works. So we keep talking about people in front of their houses. It is true that when you live somewhere, you know, it's realistic to expect that on most evenings when you come home from work, you know, in front of your house, there's an opportunity at least to be able to park near your house. But just for the public record, when people look at this, who knows when, people have an understanding of that. We often say that when landlords talk about apartments in multifamily houses and tell you how there's parking right in front, that's not actually parking that belongs to the landlord or to the house. That's just not a fair description. There's a public road that allows people to park. That is a fair description. I do think, though, kudos to you guys for, after all these years, to really look at Havel, the school. They're also going to go through construction issues and stuff. This is just all the timing is there. We haven't discussed money and how much this will cost. And I don't know if anybody has gone for the extra spaces, what it's going to cost us for the easement.
The extra spaces on North Island are part of the scope of the road diet. So right now, I think the estimate on the road diet is probably higher than we originally had planned, as per usual. There are some costs, though, that we really have to, there's some signaling that the DOT has required that they were going to do anyway. So we hope that they also fund that. So, but the parking is part of the scope of the capital project, and whether we have to look at that when the final bids get in, or when we get the full cost estimates, we'll look at that and we'll work with the DOT
The
on
extra
that.
parking
The extra parking,
that is being recommended
yeah,
here.
the actual, you know, any of the road work on Howell Street specifically is striping, basically. Paul, you maybe are.
So you don't have to do milling on that road?
So, okay, I'm glad you
Fine.
said that. So when we, first thing, let me just add to something that what the manager said. The cost of the parking in, as she said, in the green space is incorporated in the existing estimate that was provided to you. The higher estimate than originally presented is in large part due to the additional signal that the state requested on top of what we presented at Aqueduct and Denny. That's an entire new signal. And the offset money that the manager is referring to is the money that the state had already set aside in their capital budget for the Croton Avenue Highland intersection that the state was going to undertake sometime in a to be determined date, but they did have the capital monies set aside. And that is the money that we're requesting from them. The money that you don't have to spend anymore, DOT, please give to us, particularly since these are all your signals at the end of the day when we're done. And you felt it necessary to add another signal at Aqueduct and Denny. So giving us that money is even, you know, more of a reason for you to give us that money, because you added this to our scope. And we don't contest the signal there. It's something that we'll add because they asked for it and it's their road, so they have the right to do that. But by all means, they should now take the money that they were going to spend on the southern signal that they were already going to do and give it to us. So that's how we hope to bring this in, still within a fair range of our original estimates.
All right, so Paul, what's
So-
the ask from the board tonight, please?
Now, the ask from the board is which concept to proceed with,
Mhm.
the one-way or the two-way. And once we get that, then I think we can start tuning into a more solid budget with respect to cost to implement the same.
So I have one more,
Anybody have an opinion?
well, I have one more question.
Oh, sorry.
So, from Nolan's, I'm looking at the one-way option. You show a typical width of a car being 8 feet. we know the tightest part of that street is from Nolan's, probably 2/3 of the way up where you can visibly see where it widens up a little bit.
Yeah.
What is the width of that street at the tighter spots?
I believe we measured 21 feet, 22 feet in the field, Jared. Does that sound right?
Sorry, yeah, about 21, 22, did it with the wheel, yeah.
Okay, so just for point of reference, the typical garage door for a fire apparatus is 14 feet. So we're looking at squeezing through 12 feet. It's tight now. I mean, I'm a favor to one way. I was just curious of the width of the street, because then you could see where it widens up, about 3, 4 houses down from Sabrina.
Well, we also, Trustee Fritchie, we also talked about when we do commence with this project, possibly could you pull up the other slide again, Jared? We also talked about redoing the sidewalks and really minimizing them. First of all, we put them in new condition, but if we minimize their width to the minimum 4 feet, we're already running into problems with the sidewalk. If you look at, just for example, not to point out anybody's specific property, but you have drop curbs along the entire northern section for the first 100 feet. If you did a new sidewalk and stuck to code, we wouldn't really want to implement a full lot width drop curb for that type of zoning there. But, I'm sure site plans were implemented many, many years ago for this corridor. You also run into problems if you go maybe 10 feet right of the center of this this aerial. You see that white car right there. Keep it right there. You see the white car pulled in front of that structure in the center of the frame there.
Yep.
That car is backed right up, and we saw that car in the field, or a car at that lot in the field. That car is backed right up to the building, which it looks like it was a former garage that was converted to a house or a residence. But that car is backed up right to the structure, and it still sticks well into the sidewalk, which would force someone to walk into the street there. And if we narrowed that sidewalk, it would be even more prevalent. So those are little things that, I know the mayor prefaced everything by saying we're not really here to do a code crackdown. We're here to take care of the traffic issue. But these are little things that are code related that are going to be little nuances that we're going to have to figure out how to work around.
All right, thank you. That was my next question about the sidewalks on the north side, but you answered it.
Okay.
You're in favor of there are two options with one way, I think, yeah?
One way.
You are not, okay, well,
I'm in
one way
favor of
at
the
least
one way.
gives Paul like what they're looking for tonight, which is an opinion. We could change our minds, I guess, at some point, but, so you're for the one way. Are you narrowing it down to whether you want it with more of the boxes or fewer, or you're just gonna stay with the one way and let the folks figure out the best, deal?
You're talking about the hashed out spaces?
Yeah, he's asking the board if possible tonight. If not, that's okay. We can think and get back to him via email to give some direction so they can go and put some plans together, not just options.
No, I'm fine with the one way,
Okay.
the way it sits. My question was the width. Yes, we're eliminating a car coming down at me. It's still tight because in that lower area, it's better, but it's,
Maddie?
Could I just quickly interject? Good evening. The reason, Jared's concept number 3 with sort of the spacers, so
Right.
it would be the one way, but just with wider buffers,
Right.
actually came to our attention, and I'm not sure if Trustee Fritchie, also, has experienced this, as part of the fire department. But the southern side of the street there, as we're calling it, those homes are right on top of each other. Bang, 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 bang,
Yep.
bang, bang, bang. So our lieutenant who was out there with us actually mentioned, sometimes when OVAC needs to, get someone out of a home
Right.
there, there's a wall of cars. So
Mhm.
already the houses are all next to each other, and now you have a wall of cars and you can't, break through with a stretcher. So it's sort of a, aerobic
Literally, yeah.
activity. So I think that's why, in the one way, generally speaking, when we were out there, I think that's why we thought that this was an important, feature to highlight is possibly having a few more buffers. You lose a few parking spaces, but as Jared mentioned, it ends up being net zero, the way that we've counted it. So you actually don't lose anything.
Right, so one-way, that's why I was asking to even be more specific. So one-way has a net gain and one-way option has a neutral, neither a gain to this particular stretch, neither a gain nor a loss. Those are the options, I think. But you could stay with one-way if that's what you want to have input, but if you want to get even deeper than that, you
No,
know, I'm sure Paul would
The,
appreciate.
the third option seems to be the better of the three, or better of the two one-ways. It does, and to Maddie's point, the only thing is on the lower side of Havel, those hashed out places make a lot of sense. When we get up to where there's actual driveways and stuff, maybe, you can gain those spaces back.
Can
you
I
have
can
a
I jump in?
question?
I don't have a question, but I want to skip you. Here's why. A former colleague of mine used to say, "You have 3 votes." So before we have 3 votes, I don't know how you're going to vote, but we know how the mayor feels. We know how Trustee Fritchie feels. So before you say how you feel, I'm gonna say how I feel, which makes it not 3, make it 2-1, and then it's still live. Okay, add some drama.
They don't like the one way. Don't like the one way.
Yeah.
So
We're not passing legislation here, so we could also.
just
have a
indication,
conversation.
exactly. It's more casual. It's a work session.
Presentation, you gotta walk away with like something to work on. Yes, I'm going this way.
Yeah, so I remain in favor of the 2-way, but if we end up going in the one-way direction, my strong encouragement would be to flyer all of the houses that would be impacted before we make a decision formally, because I think that it is very frustrating for folks that hear we're making this change and they're saying like, well, when can I have voiced my opinion? And it's like, well, we had public meeting. It's like, I didn't know about it. So to say we made every intention to make you know about it before we made it official, that would be my strong push. That's where I am.
Pat, you're on. I'm going left to right tonight, yes.
All right. I would have actually not made it 3, but because I'm in favor of the 2-way for a couple of reasons. One, I believe that during school hours, you're going to get everybody who's on Sabrina and Jenkins. I think they're going to go and run counter to the one-way just to get out of there. So I think that's creating incremental issues if that part of the street becomes one-way. So I think there'll be incremental enforcement issues from a traffic perspective, because
I think people are gonna go against a one-way sign.
I do.
Not gonna want to be.
They're not going to want to have to deal with school traffic. So,
You're adding a lot more, you'd be adding a lot more traffic going through the schools.
yep, that's the other reason. It's like just in regular, that whole kind of sweep there, I think you're changing, it's a pretty significant traffic flow change. The second thing is, the access to the emergency vehicles. I think, if there is a big fire there and you got to get a whole bunch of apparatus there, any cars on that little stretch is going to be a problem. All right. The third reason for me is that I totally hear what you're saying about the handicap spaces and handicap parking and things like that. So for me, I would think that from a design perspective, the very first parking spots, both on the right side of this picture and on the left side of this picture, would need to be designated as handicapped only. And then even potentially there might be some conversations with the folks down at the left end of Havel Street, where there actually are some spots that, if those are off hours, if those are business establishments with hours, that maybe you try and like work something out with them. So there might be some even closer kind of handicap spots, which would make from the middle of the sidewalk there, that would be, 150 feet that people might have to go, which to me is probably what's happening right now if people have to walk anyway, because there's not a lot of parking on the street.
Okay. Dana? Oh, he's already gone. So Dana?
Like
you
I
don't
have to sit
actually
here and go,
No, you don't actually have to, but when we have presentations from the staff, I always
No, I
feel that
understand
if we
that, yeah.
can, we can also
Been
write
at
an
this a while, I
email
get
and
it now.
say, we're not voting on legislation. It's not
yeah.
people need time to think. There's no crime against thinking.
I'm gonna reach out to a couple people that I know who live around there.
Yeah. All right.
And,
Fair enough.
and then, but I think that the two-way, I think by going one way, you're really pushing a lot of cars over to the schools, which already, that Van Cortlandt is already kind of overwhelmed at, when the school starts and ends, a lot of cars flying up there already. You're putting more cars over there, people who would normally go the other way. So that and the disabled spots, it's easy for us to sit here and go, oh, you can just walk another da 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 da. Well, you know what? I'm 65. No, I'm 64. Just walk another da, da, da. It's not so easy when you get older. And older people live in these places and it's
Same age, I'm just gonna say.
no, that's fine. But it's easy for us to go, oh, you can just walk more. It's like,
people
oh, well,
don't know.
thanks. Did I mention that I have, a hip replacement? And I don't, but I don't know. I just don't think we can cavalierly go, just walk further.
So first of all, it's not cavalier. This thing has been going on. We don't design roads based on the potential that somebody's handicapped or not. There are many scenarios. There are people with young children and strollers and all that. None of this is cavalier. And the reason nothing has been done and the situation's getting worse and worse over all these years, because every political party sits here and nobody wants to do this because it is so painful. I would argue that the role of government is to do some of the things that are required, which are painful. That's not convenient. We have tags for handicapped people, legitimately handicapped people. Some get temporary, some get more permanent. If a lot of the folks, and I don't know this for a fact, but there are the owners of these places, and then there are the renters. And I think to the deputy mayor's point, you do have to ask. We've asked the businesses, we have to ask the people who live there. The people that live there today are not the people that are going to most likely be affected in 5 to 8 years because the average renter moves every 5 to 7 years. So you're asking people who aren't actually going to be there. And I am 100% sure that 100% of the landlords that own this are going to say more parking, two-way street, because they make lots of money renting out these houses and building garages into living quarters and all the other stuff that's been going on there. Nothing I'm saying is politically inappropriate or incorrect because everybody that lives in this community who sent their kids to that school up the hill from there knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I have no problem being very accurate about it. We do make exceptions for people handicapped. There could be one handicapped person there today. There could be 15. None of us know. I have no clue. And that won't be the case when this project is done. It'll be another group of people, another set. It could be 0. It could be lots. I would argue that for every single community, if you decide to rent on Route 9 and you don't have parking because there's so many people living in the building you don't have a handicap parking either because you can't park right on Route 9. There are lots of streets you can't park on. So you have to make choices also. That said, I don't really understand the people going against a one-way street. We have lots of one-way streets. I don't often see people going against a one-way street. We just created a one-way street out of a two-way. It's like saying, well, people just go through the red light because they're in a rush. Yeah, I guess somebody goes through a red light. They don't always go through a red light. For me, that reasoning doesn't make sense. The other part, though, is really valid. Like, we are making people go in a much different way. And your argument isn't only that, but I think the argument you were making is that now more people will be using that road because we're actually, by making this road better, right, and wider, people, I think it was Dana White who said, I avoid that area. I avoid it too because I almost had a major accident more than once there. It was crazy. So people now avoid it, and your argument is if you make it better, more people will use it. I get it. I'm not arguing that you're wrong. I actually didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
So now I have to think about that as well, that it's very possible that once you do that, you're in a sense widening something Now, maybe the 10 people a day, the 20, the 100 are going to say, hey, you know, I'm not so scared anymore. Now it makes more sense for me to go this way and save X number of whatever time. So I didn't think about in terms of that. Now I'll be thinking about that. And I have to actually go back in that neighborhood and see. I mean, you might be right about that. And I think we are going to get to that point by having more conversation with folks from the school who use that road, whether they live there or not, and the people, because I think the communication has to also be with people that use that road who don't live there. And we have to find a way to do a survey, to do something, because it's a big change. It's a very overcrowded area and it involves a big project. So I think we might need to get that community engagement has to be very real. Because like tonight, I already learned something I didn't know before I walked in here. So I think we have to think in those terms.
You're correct. There are two parts to my comment around the incremental traffic. One was the increased use if the traffic flows better. The other, though, the other piece, though, is that if you make that one way, everybody who currently lives on Sabrina or the upper part of Havel or Jenkins has to go past the school every time they leave their property. And that's incremental traffic to all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Up
so
the hill, as I call it.
all has to go,
Because
all
it's
has to go
up the
around
hill. Yeah.
to Van Cortlandt. So then you're transferring the traffic problem from Havel over to Van Cortlandt.
Yeah, no, I heard you.
Yeah.
No, I was only focusing on one because now I want to think about it. So I appreciate that insight. Still thinking about it. Yep.
I would also add that the schools are building out in that area, which will also change how much that is used and how much traffic is going through there. And I also question how many folks then that live in that stretch would also then start taking the cemetery as another way to go if it's no longer if it feels like an easier way than going through the other way.
So what? I'm sorry, what's happening? Well, for those of us that have lived here for decades, like, aside from all the other stuff that happens in cemeteries, that is a possibility.
Shortcut in town. You
Yeah,
could-
I mean, it's not on the GPSs yet, so don't announce it to the public because cemeteries do not get put on GPSs yet. I will say, Paul, you're still on. I just can't see you. So you got some points to look at. I think it's worth for the board to take a little ride up there, not as a group. We all live in this community. Just to take a little look. Some of the things we're talking about are our own personal theories of what people may or may not do. You know, we don't have data. We just think because we live here and we drive and we know how things work, but that's actually our role. That's why we're here. Is to use our knowledge or experience, and living there. And, Bob, I'm sure is thinking with all those years in the fire department, how does that work, et cetera. So we'll have to take a little ride, but hopefully, Paul, you got something out of it. It's, I don't know if you did or not, but at least to think about some of the comments made, maybe alleviate some concerns. I don't know. Because we're like half and half, a two-way versus one-way. I happen to like, I think the boxes, there's a lot of them. I'd like to, maybe not so many of them possibly, but I'm not an engineer. So, for me, the one way makes more sense until I take a drive though, and I have to really think about how it's used. But I do think the community engagement might help. But here's the thing. To do the community engagement about this specific thing, will it delay our ability to then speak to the state? Like, I don't have a sense of time here.
Well, maybe you and Jared, because I think that we can go forward with the road diet while simultaneously working on this, but I just want to confirm that with you both.
Yeah, this project, the state's gonna look at what we give them, right? And if we do something, if it ends up being after the state approves a design, I don't think this is gonna throw off our road diet schedule at all. I'm tempted to say that I think we're gonna have a decision from you all with marching orders and something to develop in advance of the state giving a final approval anyway. Even if we have a community engagement meeting, which I think is a great idea, but I think it's a great idea once we have a concept agreed upon with this group. I think if we go to the public with, well, which would you like, one way or two way? I don't know. I don't know if you're gonna get, I think you're gonna get both because it's
Yeah.
not just this community, it's the extended people that are impacted, the people that, it's the school's gonna weigh in on that. The Upper Havel residents are gonna weigh in on that. The Van Cortlandt residents are gonna weigh in on that because everybody's gonna weigh in on that if you don't have an option. If we go to an option which we think is best, and so be it. I will tell you, if you want to, which I think is a good idea, to go out in the field and look at it live and think about it in real time, at the spot, I'd be happy to accompany any of the trustees that want to go there with the drawings and kind of walk it and talk it. I'd be happy to do that.
Oh, when do you need an actual answer? Because we have like a couple of different
So-
opinions here.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is I really don't, there's no deadline on the answer. We can do this project anytime. I think us doing the parking
Right.
needs to be done regardless of what you do here. If you don't touch it at all, we should still do the parking. If you pick a concept and else to start developing it, we're still gonna do the parking. So I don't really have a deadline on an answer. This is
So
a
you
condition.
also wanted tonight an answer on the parking because,
The
and
parking is part of the scope. That's already part of the road diet. The
yeah, but we
parking,
weren't told what the easement budget, what the cost was.
it's already
was-
in the estimate that you have. So
Okay, got
the
it.
estimate, that's already done. I just want to, I think what we're talking about is timing, which can be
Just the
extended.
one,
But
just
I,
one
but I
piece.
also want to point out, I think that, Paul has an option. I think you might have a very divided perception because this is going to be based on where you live, what you feel,
Right.
not so the priorities have to be safety and emergency response. Like that's, so it's not should we do this or not? We really don't have a choice. And if it snows, all bets are off on that street. So it has to be safety driven. I think that we can also keep in mind that a lot of the traffic to the school is going to be rerouted. Now, it's not necessarily happening tomorrow, but the buses are all going on Stormy Town. That's
Oh,
a whole nother
right.
issue. So you're not gonna have the same issue with the
Right.
buses on Van Cortlandt that you do. So I do think we can have a conversation with the school district too. We've talked about to them a lot about the road diet, particularly with the signaling at Van Cortlandt. But I think this warrants another conversation to get a better understanding of what they anticipate the future traffic flows to be and with parents and dropping off and all that stuff, because it will change fairly
Yeah.
significantly. So that may have, that may mitigate the challenges that people will have if we make it one way and they have to go around the block during trying to get to the train. I think that's where you're going to have concerns. It's like, I get to the train, this is easier for me, but there's going to have to be a compromise here because it's currently not safe. And I don't think anybody who lives in this area would be saying, yeah, this is the way I would design the road today and keep it the way it is. So what we can do is, I think we have a little bit of homework to do.
Right.
We can certainly talk to the school district and we can come back. I think we'll have to come back with maybe a more definitive pros and cons.
Yeah.
Get some direction and then go to, talk to the public about how we got here and what the concerns are and how we can address them. And if we have to make
Well, now you have
adaptations,
a list of concerns, I think,
yeah. So maybe that's Paul, I think that might be our best next steps to sort of fine tune this a little bit from a safety perspective.
Okay,
Okay, we're ready to go next thing? Next item?
Yep.
Okay.
Paul and Jared, thank you very much.
Did you print out the resolution or not?
good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Hi, thank you.
Next, the Board of Trustees has been working with staff, Police Department, Corporation Counsel, myself, on an immigration resolution for 2025.
And interested parties in the community?
Yes, absolutely. And interested parties and stakeholders in the community. So at this point, I will turn it over to Mayor Levin and Deputy Mayor Lopez to discuss the immigration policy.
Okay, thank you. So the whole board has had input, and a lot of the input has been put together by Deputy Mayor, and he'll be speaking shortly, but over the past, since December, there's been discussion on updating and redoing our, a resolution that this board started actually, not this board, but the Board of Trustees that put together in 2017. We looked at renewing the newest resolution about immigration. So why? Because recently, with change in federal government guidelines and executive orders and a whole bunch of stuff that's in the news, we have a very large immigrant population that works here and lives here and plays here and visits here. Not unusual for Austining. It's been like this for decades and decades. Demographics might change, but immigration has been here forever. It's been a very diverse community for 150 years plus. So I think it's something that actually is one of the reasons people live here. It's one of the reasons people enjoy living here. But under some new orders, there is a movement of having a federal agency that most of us refer to as ICE, have made some comments about coming into communities and really with warrants and different kind of warrants and without warrants in some cases, and in layman's term, rounding up immigrants and having them leave the country and having them exit the country. The school system, for those of you that have been involved in that conversation, has been having meetings with parents, many of them. Dana White and I went to such a meeting with Neighbors Link where we were on a panel, and I would say there were over 180 people in the room. For a matter of context, they were expecting 40 to 50. So there were a lot of people in the room. It was done mostly in Spanish and also with interpreters in English as well, English and Spanish. It was a very moving day for me personally. I myself am an immigrant, and I do remember what my parents went through. It's not the easiest of life to leave a country you're from and come to the United States, and for usually for a better life or because you're running for something from a terrible life. And so it reminded me of, and I said this at the meeting, what my grandparents must have gone through when they were in their 40s, figuring out how to save their children's life from being killed. And it's very stressful, frankly, but more so for the people that have to worry about their children and their grandparents and everybody in their family from federal agencies. This is not a local police issue. Just to be clear, our police department does not, with or the resolution without, has not and does not ask people there for documentation, immigration issues is not really part of local police. Oh, the chief was there. I'm sorry. You should have reminded me because you were the major speaker actually, because what they really want to know is about the police. And the reason they want to know, and the resolution, I don't know if do we need to read the resolution? Because it's in the, I think it was in the agenda, but you can read it if you want to. Okay. Right. The reason we're doing this, the reason we spend more than the 45 minutes we thought we were going to spend there, as it became really apparent for those in the public that don't know, that most countries outside of the United States, and this is not just Latin America, it's almost all countries, the police is part of one force. You've got your federal, you've got your regional, they all wear uniforms. They all report to the same sort of regional heads. The United States actually doesn't, and it's not just New York. Local police report to the local. So our police reports to the Board of Trustees. They have their own uniforms, they have their own rules, they have their own policies. And our next door neighbors in Briarcliff can have different rules and different policies. But to the average person, documented or not, it doesn't matter if you've lived here for 10 generations, most people think and don't understand that our police are actually very local and have always been that way. But to immigrants, they think it's all one police force. So a lot of it is the explanation that our police does not actually work with ICE. And that took a little bit of time, but I'm going through a little bit of an explanation because I believe in putting things in context. I personally, and this is my one vote, love a diverse community. I've lived in New York most of my life. For me, it's one of the reasons my husband and I moved here 34 years ago and raised our children. But we don't vote just on our personal belief. We vote on behalf of the community. The chief pointed out over and over again that we don't ask for any documentation, neither do our employees. So part of the resolution that's different than the other one is that none of our employees, and we have over 200 of them, will be asking for documentation. There's no reason for most of what we do here in the village to know someone's immigration status at all. And the chief, I think, was very clear about calling the police directly, the local police. The police will come if someone from the community calls them and says, I need you to come here because somebody's at my door. I don't know who they are. They say they're this, but I don't know. Can you come and help me? Because when somebody calls the police, they document that they were called and then they will go to help. If somebody from across the street of where ICE is calls and says, look, somebody's just pulled out a gun. I don't know who these people are. They're wearing blue jackets. What do I know? Please come out. I feel unsafe. As the chief explained, they will come out when a member of the public, but they don't go with ICE. The only way, and you'll hear it in the resolution, that local police are obligated to do anything with federal agencies if there is a judicial warrant. If they are looking for someone, Mr. X, who's 5'9" and has blonde hair and and is wanted because there is a warrant out signed by a federal judge, is the way I would say it in plain English. That warrant has to, and they need something from the police. The police will look at the warrant, and if it makes sense, they are obligated to. And I'm looking at you because I got to get this right, because it's going to go on the record. And the resolution will actually read through. Our resolution is more detailed than others, because as I think the deputy mayor and I talking to a number of advocacy group on behalf of immigrants spoke about, the definitions are sometimes the confusing part. And so you're going to read it, you're going to put in your more than 2 cents worth, and we worked in, but all the members of the board had input. We met with the chief, he's looked at it. There's Link, that is an organization that's been very helpful, that has 25 immigration attorneys, so they have a lot of experience with this, have all been involved in this, and we would like to vote on it in next week's meeting. And there will be some discussion from the board beyond the context that I just tried to put it in.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So I'm going to start with a little bit of added context to what the mayor just said. I want to talk about, in short, why we're doing this, and then I'm going to very concisely go through the resolution. I won't read the resolution word for word, but I'm going to go through what's in the content of the resolution. Following this, we'll have our discussion, and then the resolution language will be made public so folks can review it, ask us questions, and then next week we'll be able to vote on it during the legislative session. So starting with the additional context. So we have language that we passed as a Board of Trustees in 2017 related to immigration. And a lot of that language is consistent with what the mayor just said, that everyone has the opportunity to access village services irrespective of their immigration status, or that the police won't ask someone what their immigration status is when they are stopping them. Things like that. That is all in that 2017 resolution. There was one piece that was not reflected there, and that was added in 2021 as a point of discussion, which was, should the police department accompany ICE when they are conducting their business? And at that point, the board's decision was that they should not. And there was an emergency order added from the then chief saying, we will not do that. And so that has been kind of in place. That is not in the police procedures officially, but it's kind of an addendum to that. So as a result of this kind of hodgepodge that we have, we wanted to consolidate everything together and make sure that it was as robust as possible. So we have the resolution that's in front of you. So that's the added context. Why we are doing this. It is not only because of the rich history that the mayor spoke about, but it's also because we want to be able to do our jobs. There will be no bigger fan of OPD than me, especially because of what they do. They keep our community safe. And what we know is that particularly when you have a community that has a large number of immigrants, if they feel like their status may be in consideration when they call the police, then they are less likely to call the police, which makes us all less safe. If they witness a crime or a victim of a crime, if they are involved in what we see in the village, a lot of the kinds of issues have to do with vehicle and traffic, domestic issues. These are personal issues that involve having to call the police, and you need to be able to do that. So that trust is really important. And the police, what they've been doing in practice is building relationships with the community. So if you are walking around and you see what kind of dynamic exists, there is a strong relationship there. So we just want to codify a lot of what is already existing. So what is in the resolution itself? It starts with some language reflecting what the mayor just said as to why we are doing this. Then definitions. There are, to preview this for you, if you have a tea or a hot drink, now may be a good time to take a sip. We have 13 sections that I'm going to very briefly go through, but here we go. The first one is definitions. It's super important to have these definitions codified because citizenship or immigration status or judicial warrant, some of these terms are ones that we're more familiar with than others. So just having them defined in a common way is really important. The second section is around equal access to services, which we already have that all village services are going to be available to everyone irrespective of status. Number 3 is restrictions on inquiry, which is that OPD or any other village department won't question individuals about their immigration status. That was in the 2017 resolution. So that is consistent there. Number 4 is prohibition on threats. Also in the 2017 resolution, saying that OPD or any other village department won't threaten to report someone based on their status, which is also important because we don't want that to ever happen. And so codifying it just ensures that everyone is super clear. Number 5 is no local enforcement of immigration laws. So this is really, really, really important, that village resources cannot be used for detecting, apprehending, or profiling individuals solely based on their immigration status. If there is another crime that is in discussion, that's a different matter altogether. Everything we're talking about now is specific about immigration. It is not about any other issue, any other kind of crime or any other consideration. This should not impede the police department's ability to deal with crime in any way. And so that is key. However, this resolution says that there's not going to be local enforcement of federal immigration laws. Number 6 is limits on stops and arrest. So OPD cannot stop, detain, or arrest someone solely based on their immigration status. That is also kind of consistent with the enforcement of immigration law. Number 7 is restrictions on communication with immigration authorities. So this is specific around under what conditions can OPD communicate with a federal immigration authority about a specific individual. And the language has 4 very specific cases in which they can, and it's, if they're involved in terrorist activity, if there's a crime that is involved, something like that. In those cases, then they can. Number 8 is compliance with federal law. So that specifically says that this resolution does not prohibit OPD from sharing immigration status when explicitly required by federal law. I think it is important to note that everything that we are covering here is consistent with federal law. It is not only putting together what we have done in the past, but also based off of the Westchester County law. And that's really important because it went through a lot of process, a lot of lawyers, a lot of discussion. And so we are very confident that this is consistent with federal law, which we certainly want to be. Number 9 of 13, almost home, is access to village resources. This says that immigration authorities cannot access non-public village facilities or equipment without some sort of kind of exigent or emergency circumstances. And really, this is meant to avoid a circumstance where you have immigration authorities saying, hey, we need access to the community center because we have, 100 people and we need one big room to hold them in for the purpose of immigration enforcement. This is saying that they are not allowed to use those village spaces for that reason specifically. Number 10 is detention and release procedures. So if someone is arrested by the Ossining Police Department, this is saying that they cannot be held by OPD based on their immigration status. So if they otherwise would be free to go, but OPD would be wanting to hold them there in order to have an immigration authority come to detain them or process them in any other way, this is saying that's not allowed. If the only reason you are holding them is their immigration status, that is not allowed. Number 11 is non-participation in immigration enforcement. And this is explicitly saying that OPD does not perform federal immigration enforcement. This is really building off of separation of powers from the Constitution. This is something that is really important to emphasize. Number 12 of 13, no use of village funds for detention. That basically means no village resources will be used in order to detain people solely based on their immigration status. And lastly, number 13 is transparency and accountability, that OPD must report any policy changes related to federal immigration authorities to the village board and make them publicly available. Those are the 13 sections of the resolution. I'll open it up for discussion.
Dana, I'll start from the right, go to the left.
First, I would like to thank Deputy Mayor Lopez for all his work on this and for leading this effort. A lot of it is based on, am I right, county policy?
Yes.
Correct.
So this is not just, it's actually county policy. So we've taken that and made it specific to Ossining. And I think that there is a lot of fear, you know, and I think the more we can do to let people know where we stand, where the OPD stands, is good. So I am all for this resolution, and I have no questions.
I think one point of clarification, someone may say, well, if that's the county policy, isn't Ossining in the county of Westchester? Doesn't that apply to Ossining? It's just as confusing as the town of Ossining, village of Ossining. The village is in the town, but if the town passes a particular resolution, it may be specific to that town. So really, the Westchester County resolution is specific to Westchester County employees and spaces that has to do with that, but it is not applicable to other municipalities. So those municipalities have to pass their own resolutions, which is why we have our own resolution.
And it's always confusing with the county. Again, it's not a reporting structure. We don't report to the county doesn't report to, it isn't. And I think people have a hard time understanding that. Importantly, the county has its own police. So the reason they do this is they have their own police, they have their own staff. So they actually have the state police, the county police doesn't report to us, it reports, but they don't have actually jurisdiction without invitation from the local police. So that's why they passed it. And theirs has a lot to do with correction officers and a lot of other things. So it's actually a very interesting item. And there are other mayors looking at ours, the way we looked at other communities. And you may find in passing that some communities have different. Some communities will have nothing. I will say about the town, just as a footnote, really more than anything else, that the supervisor was actually in here before. She knows this is being discussed. So the police department actually covers both the village and the town. And so this actually has a lot to do with the police department and our employees. Theoretically, the town doesn't actually have a say directly in the police. They may or may not pass a resolution. That's up to their board. But in this case, the about 37,000 folks of Ossining, both town and village, are covered by the police department that reports to the Board of Trustees. So just as a footnote in this particular instance. Bob, do you have any comments or questions?
No, no questions. And thank you for the work on this, and I'm in favor of the way it reads.
Are you doing a ditto?
And I say once again, thanks for all the work and thanks to the chief and his crew for everything that they're doing. And because I really do think it's important that the focus be on helping the community understand that they can go to the police department and for all of the really local issues, which is really what we're trying to manage here, because the local issues are what we have to really think about and worried about. And this is just kind of making sure that everybody understands that that's the focus. But it also, I think, allows the chief and the people that in the department to also continue to do the things that they do, which is, sometimes they do need to cooperate, right, with other jurisdictions to help get things done. So it's good.
Thank you. So Stuart, I think, and Chief, it sounds like no one's asking for changes, which I appreciate because you all saw this. And so I think we sort of worked through it. It sounds like it will be on for next week for vote by the board at a legislative session. And it's also a meeting if people want to come and speak, virtually, in person, it's there. If it gets passed, if it does, then the police actually takes this and puts it into their sort of book of business. The reason we also do these resolutions is that it actually goes into the manual at the police department and actually helps each and every police officer understand what their roles are. So there are no questions, complications, because they follow the rules and they follow the chain of command. And that's how the process is supposed to work and does work here. So I think we're done here. Thank you. Dana, are you?
I just had a question, so that people can see it, will it be linked to next week's agenda? Or if someone wants to read it?
Yeah, it
or-
always is. Yeah,
Okay. 'Cause
it'll be probably in the mayor's message.
Why am I looking at
Is it
you? I
already
don't
on
know.
there? I think. No.
We'll make sure it's linked to this
Yeah.
agenda and it will absolutely be on next. agenda.
Next, yeah, like, just again, for those that follow, even the website has it, the mayor message has it. There's a bottom piece that says what's on the next week's agenda with business or legislative, and as many links as so it'll absolutely, but it might be actually available sooner than that.
Yeah,
So I
no,
think,
it
yeah,
should be available this week.
yeah, so
so-
that'll be great. Good, I think we're on to the next topic. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, next topic. We have Peter Asadorian and Kansas Carey here from Brown Body LLC to discuss their proposal for a dispensary on North Highland Avenue.
You,
Welcome.
Thank you.
hello.
How are you? Hey, Maddie. You have my presentation, right?
Yep. You can bring it up.
Oh, wonderful. Did
Could
get
you
the-
state your name and
Oh, I'm sorry,
address,
yes.
please?
My name is Peter Asadorian.
And I'm Kansas Carey.
Address? You live in Austining or
Well, we live in Mayapack, right?
you live in Mayapack?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
great, thank you.
So, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor Lopez, respected members of the board, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to introduce ourselves and present this cannabis dispensary, the Flower Shop. It's our vision for cannabis dispensary here in Austining, and we believe our concept is well suited to contribute positively to the community through safety, education, and economic growth. Our goal tonight is to explain how we align with Austining's values, address any questions you might have, and seek your thoughtful recommendation to the New York State Office of Cannabis Management as we strive to make the Flower Shop a beneficial part of your community. So who we are? I'll hand this over.
You have to say next.
You. Sorry, next. Thank you.
Hi, so I'm Kansas. Just want to start off by saying how excited we are to be given the opportunity to open a business in Austining. I've always loved the village of Austining. I grew up in Verplank. Not a lot of shopping there, as you know, if you've been in the area, so would venture down here a lot. And yeah, we're just excited. We've spent hours, actually days, looking for locations. We looked over at Croton, we looked in Austining, and nothing really fit the diversity or culture we were looking for. I mean, White Plains has it, but here is more of a sense of community, and that's really what we were looking for. So, yeah, that's pretty much about me. I'm from Local 21. Currently, I'm a union member. And I follow compliance with union standards. So I know lots of consumer safety, product safety, so, there's a lot of regulations in the cannabis business, which can apply to, following regulations, so that's something I'm really confident in, being able to provide for our business. I also, assistant manage a store, Benefit Cosmetics in New Canaan. So I've built customer service relationships for a very long time and, very personal with people. And that's something that I like doing. I like being, sense of community and building a relationship for,
Great.
the town. So.
Thank you. It's
Next,
more
please.
nerve wracking being up there than you thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
Take a breath, it's okay, we're a friendly group. You do need to stand a little closer to the mic because,
Oh.
no, you were fine.
Oh.
She's just taller. And relax, it's.
Thank
really-
you.
It's all good.
Thank you very much.
It's just that for people on Zoom, please speak as much as you can into the mic so they
Okay.
can actually hear.
Thank
what's
you.
going on.
So a little about myself. I started my professional career in 1998. I started working as a cell phone guy. I bought a little store in Mount Kisco. I later opened up 2 more stores in Danbury, Connecticut. I was acquired. I eventually ended up managing 63 retail locations in 9 states with 350 employees. And that really gave me like a lot of expertise in large scale retail management, working with employees, customer relations. In that it was a cell phone business, we were collecting people's names, personal information, social security number, date of birth, driver's license, credit cards. In my many years, I did 16 years, never once had an issue with any sort of data breach. Never had any issues with customer complaints. So understanding that there's a lot of complexities to the cannabis business, and we've spent probably the better part of a year and a half learning them. I think that speaks to our expertise in that. In 2012, my brother and I bought the New York Firehouse Grill in Peekskill, which we still own and operate. So having a liquor license for nearly 13 years, also same thing, never an issue. We've been fully vetted by the OCM. We've been fully vetted by the Liquor Authority. We have a government contract, so we've been fully vetted for that. So, again, just to illustrate some of our expertise and some of our experience, I ran a 20-person team doing cell tower work. There's a lot that goes into building cell towers, climbing up cell towers, a lot of safety, a lot of frequency FM, stuff we have to deal with. Currently, I'm working as a financial advisor, a financial consultant. I did mortgages for 8 years. So we have a very diverse background with retail, employee relations, and the like, and why we think that would be a good fit for us to operate a business here in Austin. Next slide, please. So this is the first thing everyone asks, like, what is brown body and how is that's a weird name for a dispensary. So in 2019, my wife was diagnosed with Graves' disease, which later turned to small fiber neuropathy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's very painful. It's similar to like an MS type of a situation. So she's a union contractor and welder, and being on your feet, using your hands and your arms, it's very trying. So we were looking for a new opportunity, something that we could, make a living with. And with her background in cosmetics, we were trying to open up like a brow bar type of a thing. While we were working on finding a location, the opportunity for cannabis kind of came, and we were able to apply. Then we got pregnant. And so like the whole brown body thing went on the wayside, and we were fortunate enough about 8 months later, to get a phone call from our attorney saying, congratulations, you guys won a lottery, your name was pulled. And if you keep doing the right thing here, you'll have your license. And that was in 2014. So while our corporate name is Brown Body, that's a terrible name for a dispensary, we understand. And that'll just be the corporate name. Right now we're looking for the flower shop to be our name once we get legal approval from our attorney. Next slide, please.
Oh, you said 2014?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. 2024, we issued the license. Did I
Okay.
say 14? I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
apologize.
that's okay.
Next slide, please.
Okay.
So some of our motivation, personal enjoyment. I'm like, we both obviously use cannabis, not like excessively, not while we're driving, but at
We're
night,
not judging.
down.
You don't have to spend a lot of time.
Okay, we advocate for legalization and safe consumption. You can go to the next slide, please. And part of the reason why we are advocates for cannabis to be through the OCM and through New York State is that you're getting quality product that's been tested. You know, the potency, you're not going to have any accidents. You're not going to take something that's got like a fentanyl or something dangerous in it. It's very safe. It's approved by the OCM. Community well-being, economic opportunity. Obviously, there's a lot of money that goes in there and a lot of tax dollars, and we'd like to capture that, give it to Austining, and not let it go to the, you know, to the black market, so to speak. And then beyond the recreational use, while we're not a medical dispensary or retail operation, there are a lot of people that use CBD and THC for medical benefits, you know, help them sleep, help them relax, and so forth. So, next slide, please.
You want one more slide?
Yes,
back
please.
then?
I'm sorry,
You
one
just
more slide
changed that.
forward.
Okay, Jamie,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, so we were very fortunate. We got a phone call, as Kansas was saying. We spent about 6 months driving up and down 9. We started in Austining. We could not find anything. Couldn't find any landlords that want to do business. Some of them, if they have any sort of federal money, Arcadia, for one, they just are completely against it. They've got federal funding, and because we've still got a federal issue, they're not allowed to lease to us. So other areas that we found that did want to lease to us, they had a CVS or a ShopRite, and they had, you know, a rule, no cannabis. Or the other thing is obviously the 500, 250 rule with regard to churches, places of worship, schools, etc. And then other cannabis, 1,000-foot rule. So when we came across North Highland, we got a call from our realtor and said that that spot was available. I turned to her, I said, I think we just found our spot. We raced down, we saw it, and we fell in love with it. So it's a high traffic area. There's roughly 16,000. Last I checked, 2019, I believe, demographic showed about 16,000 cars. It's probably a little bit higher than that right now. Perfect clientele. Village of Austining, I think, is very diverse clientele and really, you know, fits our mold. The regional influence, I think, is also spectacular. Is that we're right next to Croton. Where our access, our proximity to highways is fantastic. And we're going to pull in a lot of clients from other towns and jurisdictions who are going to spend money and also help with the tax revenue. All the way up to like where Kansas is from, the Verplank, Buchanan, Montrose.
People's route to work and all come
Right.
up 9's the only way, yeah.
Exactly. So, so like I said, after our search, we found that to be just a fantastic spot for us. Next slide, please. And probably, yeah. Okay, so the location itself is the old Green Thumb Nursery, which has been vacant for many years, and it's it's a gut renovation job. But again, it's a beautiful location. It's on a gorgeous piece of property. It's got a secure wrought iron gate. It's got plenty of parking. It will be very well lit. And it's a highly visible location and very safe. Also, something that we were really keen on was finding a standalone location rather than being in the heart of town for traffic purposes. We're very conscious of the fact that children will be walking by, and you know it's not a product for them. We are both.
Can I ask, are you buying or leasing the property?
We are leasing.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was gonna ask that too. Okay, so you're leasing it and you're gonna be doing all the work because there's gonna be a lot of work. to
Yes.
Put that up to what you want to have.
Yes, and we'll further slides. We'll.
Oh,
show
I thought you
some of
said this was the last one.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, so
Okay,
in,
no, keep
in the
going.
interest of saving time, I'll go quickly, but like I
That's
definitely
fine, go ahead.
probably
Keep going.
overdid
I
the
thought you said it
information.
was the end. Okay.
I'm sorry. So we're working with a company called Palmer Retail Solutions. They are the provider of fixtures for T-Mobile. As I said, I was in the cell phone business. I work with T-Mobile. So they are a professional, high quality product that resonates with our brand's vision. Our builder, Anthony Fucci from T-Square Construction, is also my cousin. He's got expertise building dispensaries. I think he's done 10, 11. So he's also able to help us to open a store that not only meets all the OSHA requirements, exceeds them, whatever the village is requesting of us, that we can, you know, we have a blank slate. We can make it as safe and as robust as you guys would like. We're going for a Mediterranean aesthetic, which I will show pictures on the next slide. Warm colors, natural wood elements. It's just,
We have a couple of residents near that area, so.
yeah, we don't want it to
Nothing
look
loud.
like, yeah, nothing loud, no images of pot and weed, none of the words on there. You know, this is going to be a very professional, upscale looking environment, and the inside is going to be, you know, very beautiful. I'll show you some pictures. Yeah. So if you look there, like those are some images that we put together. Those tables are actually from Palmer. So we will actually have those exact tables. My wife told me like, we need those tables. They're beautiful. I want them. Okay, no problem. Next slide, please. And this is just some AI renderings that we put together. We are thinking about removing the ceiling and doing big vaulted ceiling again with, with planning approval. We're looking to do like this exposed beam, this really pretty look. Like you see right there with the pictures, and then on the bottom there, that stone helmet. Thank you. You can go to the next slide. So like I said, this is a full gut renovation. We're going to transform the entire thing. So we're going to have a foyer and a waiting area. That's where there's going to be security, and there's going to be a person there with a tablet that's compliance with New York State. That'll be to scan IDs. They will then be buzzed in when it's their turn to go into the store. We're working with our architect for an exit location from the store and an exit back outside of the building, so we can keep a nice steady flow of traffic. It's not a very large space, about 1,400 square feet. So we're trying to maximize that space as best that we can. We're also going to have a dedicated back entrance for deliveries. So that way never does the product pass through the retail area. It's always secure right into our vault. We also have our point of sale, which I'll talk about in a moment, in the back, so we can accept inventory, we can serialize inventory, and I'll explain later why that's important. Next slide, please. All right, these are some of our ramp up projections. Maybe they're a little ambitious, maybe they're a bit modest. We'll find out. Right now, New York State averages about $25,000 per day is the average. I know some that do 70, I know some that do 10. My brother's actually a partner in a dispensary in Peekskill, so I've got some very firsthand knowledge. I've been working very closely with that group. But you'll see our growth, and then when you take the tax revenue and you derive it from those numbers, you see that there's a healthy contribution to the village. Next slide, please. So some of our strategies, a brand and digital presence. So obviously, SEO, search engine optimization, mobile and delivery service. So we will have the ability to do deliveries. The company that we're working with, it has an all-encompassing CRM, customer relation management software. And that also has delivery tracking. So what we will be able to see is real-time inventory, real-time tracking. It does route optimization, so we don't have them going back and forth like, crazy. It's the safest way to go. The items that are in the vehicle 20% of those items must be pre-sold. So we're not just driving around with cannabis in the car. 20% of it must be pre-sold. That gets done online. We'll also have an app. We're also going to be, obviously, the training. I've got like pages of training notes, which I won't bore everybody with, but we follow stringently at the very minimum OCM's guidelines, and beyond that, we will expand and make sure that our staff is obviously very well trained. We have a farm out of New York that's offering us an exclusive strand that I understand I haven't tried, but I heard it's really good. So that'll kind of differentiate us and maybe make us more of a destination for some of the outside areas. And then operational optimization. We're highly data analytic, and we can really get into the minutia analysis paralysis, I call it. But like we'll really, we'll dig deep, and we'll make sure that we've got everything figured out, and our channels and our salespeople are firing all cylinders and giving a robust experience for everybody that comes in. Next slide, please. So surveillance. New York State requires a minimum of 45-day recording time, which absolutely will have. Approximately 35 cameras, but I wrote over 30. So that'll cover interior and exterior, intrusion detection, license plate recognition, identity verification, which I discussed, and then on-site armed security. New York State OCM does not require to have armed security. They don't require that, but we want to have security on our peak hours. And if it turns out that our peak hours are always, then we'll always have armed security, because that to us is also paramount. Next slide, please. We'll have a redundant system. So we'll have a secondary alarm system, which will have a wireless backup, so we'll have uninterrupted protection. We'll have top tier locking mechanism, panic buttons at every workstation, access control, so that we'll have electronic locking into the back room, into our safe area, and especially into our vault. And then our emergency preparedness plan, where we work with the OPD and make sure that we have a security plan, emergency plan, and Of course, we would take any feedback and we would implement that because we want our customers and our employees to be as safe as possible. Next slide, please. So for lighting, light it up. Exterior lighting, strategically placed LED lighting, lights are placed at key entry points, pathways throughout parking areas. We'll have no shadows, we'll have no dead spots. We are very much aware that there are condos to our back left, and we want to be very, careful about not blinding them and annoying them with our stuff. So we will obviously work with planning to make sure that everything is strategically located. Our architects are going to work with the village to optimally position everything, and then we're also evaluating doing a generator or solar backup, or maybe even both, so that way we just don't have any downtime. So that's something that we're thinking about. Don't know if we can do that, but we're going to certainly try. Next slide, please. Signage. So we'll work with the village to make sure the best placement for the sign will follow regulatory compliance. As I said earlier, it'll be a family-friendly store. There'll be no images of weed leaves. There'll be no pot weed, nothing like that. It's all going to be very professional, and we're working with a graphic design team that is going to help us, put out a beautiful logo and image and signage that will be all the things that we just mentioned. Next slide. Technology. So we're going to have 3 customer self-checkout stations to help with the flow of traffic so we don't get a bottleneck. Those will be 22-inch interactive screens. We'll have 3 to 4 checkouts at the very back, also 22-inch screens. We'll have 5 tablets on the floor, so that way people can be rung out by a bud tender. Our vault operations is 2 specialized systems for our vault employees, plus another one that's going to serialize inventory, which, like, for example, if, let's say, OPD picks up a kid and he's got, weed that's serialized, and they call us up and they say, hey, we got this, do you know where it came from? We can take it down to the person. From seed to sale, it's tracked, and then beyond that, it's a serialized inventory. So we have access to that. So if we find somebody who is, doing anything that's unscrupulous or distributing when they shouldn't be, we'll get right to the bottom of that. And like we do at the firehouse, like, we work very closely with local police. They have access to our cameras. If they need to come in, they have access to our building. They have our cell phone numbers. So, like, same thing. That's the same thing that we offer. And then on our back office, electronically locked office houses our safe, our IT room, and then our office for ourselves. Next slide, please. Compliance. So we use BioTrack. That's for New York State compliance, and that keeps everything within legal framework, and that ensures traceability, and it also ensures that reporting standards are being met. Carrot is our CRM, and they integrate with everything, customer preferences, loyalty programs. There's not really allowed through that, so I don't know what's on there. But OCM does not allow for loyalties and discounting and birthday giveaways and things of that sort, so we won't have that. And then we're really actually kind of excited about something that I don't think anyone else has right now. We're working with a group that's coming out with an artificial intelligence bud tender that we would be able to let our customers call and speak to, and can also use for our employees that can call up and speak to it. And it's fully trained. It knows everything. It learns. We're going to do a demonstration, but, like, in the interest of time, I don't have it handy right now. But I did a demonstration, and they asked the guy who did it, like, how's your grandson Noah doing? It was, like, really interesting. So that's something that it's a brave new world, right? So yeah, it is a bit, but it is, it's expensive, but it does give perfect information. If somebody comes in and they have any sort of questions, we will be able to answer them, but in the off chance that we can't, we always have that as a backup. Next slide, please. E-commerce, the apps, like I told you about, the integrated delivery system, and all of these are woven into our POS and CRMs. So really, we're gonna leverage technology to make sure that we're doing as best a job as we can to keep our products safe, to keep our delivery drivers safe, and to offer a safe experience for our shoppers. Next slide, please. Yeah, the vault is.
Sorry about that. 1 second.
Thank you. Okay, the vault. Perfect.
There we go.
So that is the interior shot of a previously built vault. If you can go to the next slide, please. So the vault is the heart of our security. It houses all our products. It's organized and well protected. It's got a 12-pin locking system, which ensures that nobody gets in there unauthorized. It's integrated with the alarm. It's impenetrable. It's built with a 9-gauge security mesh. The openings are less than 1 inch, so you can really only get about like this much of your finger into it. That's about it. It's a reinforced structure. It's covered with sheetrock. There's no opportunity for burrowing because it's built on slab. And it is built in with it's its own separate security zone. So that way, if the vault door is not secured, you can't arm your system. It also will have 5 cameras in there, 1 in each corner, and then an eye in the sky that oversees everything. So the inventory is 100% being watched all the time. And we have access to that from our computers or from our phones. Next slide, please. Thank you. So thank you. I'm sorry that was very long, but we were trying to be thorough. And
Very educational.
thank you. We'd love to open up to some questions.
Great. I'm gonna go to my right again, and any comments or question?
Thanks. It is a nice lot. Kind of isolated a little bit. Would you be tearing down all the stuff in the back and the parking lot that?
No, the owner of the building wants to put up a fence where the curb in the parking lot is. He wants to put up a fence and he wants to keep all of his structures in the back and
Oh, okay.
park vehicles and such back there. I suspect that all is, subject to planning approval and everything, so I don't make any speculation about if that'll be approved or not, but that's what he's hoping for.
So are you leasing the whole property?
We're leasing the building and everything up into the back of the lot, so he's keeping behind there.
So somebody has to figure that out. Because I thought
Yeah.
they were leasing the whole thing, but they're not.
So if Peter and Kansas end up going forward and everything goes as planned, they're gonna have to go before the planning board for site plan approval, which will contemplate everything that's done on the site, regardless of what area they're leasing or not leasing. So that will be taken care of.
Okay, great. Super, Dana.
Thank you.
How is it North Highland became our cannabis mecca? That's what I want to know. There's because we have another one closer.
34 Main, yeah, there.
No,
15 North Island.
yeah, in the old
That's
Austin
Austin
Bakery.
Bakery, right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because everybody did what they did. They went down Route 9 and started driving. And there are stores already, and you need a lot of what you're describing is what the state requires. It's not like you're doing, not because you're doing it because it's actually required of you to do it. And so to do that, you need the parking, you need the security, you need, so everybody does the same thing. They drive down Route 9 and try to find a place.
We did, I mean, we did actually have an opportunity for a spot in White Plains, but operating White Plains seems transactional and not like a community, and we really didn't love it. It was slightly more expensive, but totally within our budget, but we really didn't love the location. There's a lot of competition there. It didn't feel.
So you looked at that. You're
didn't feel
wondering how you could
great.
open Dana so close to places instead
No,
of.
that was interesting. It's very, very far apart. North Highland is very long.
They're 1.2 miles.
Yeah.
Two different
So-
communities, actually. I think.
Yeah.
Get
And
different.
plus
that.
our ability to pull from the neighborhood.
Yeah, yeah,
communities up there
exactly.
is what I love about it also.
I mean, I think it's a great location for that. And you don't have, you said your brother is involved in Peekskill in a dispensary.
He is, yes.
Yeah.
He's an investor.
They have 3 now, right? Or
They were gonna have 5.
they're gonna have 5.
Yeah,
Okay.
originally our license was tied, we had a fire in 2023. And we were shut down for about 8 months, and we were approached by another cannabis, the one who he ended up becoming investors with. They wanted to buy our spot or rent our spot. We said no to that, obviously, because we have a thriving business. But that got us interested in cannabis opportunity. Then when we got our first approval, it was tied to the firehouse's location, which was again operational and running. So we called the OCM and we said that location's no longer viable. They said, okay, go find another one. We're like, that's easy. And then months later, we finally came across North Island.
Well, I think it'd be great to have a thriving business in a location that has been empty for a really long
Pretty
time.
great. Yeah, thank you.
So, thanks.
Of course.
Thanks for coming. We've seen a handful of these presentations. I feel like they only get better. So
Thank you.
thank you for the detail and all of that. And the puns.
yes.
Big pun fans.
I appreciate
Yeah,
that. Glad
absolutely.
I got my dad here.
Yes, absolutely. my question is around ownership. What percentage of this do you all own?
100.
It's a good number.
Thank you. Now we may be taking on some investors and New York State requires that we maintain 51%. We are not interested in giving up more than 25 or 30. Also, anybody that buys more than that gets in 10%, they become, I believe it's called a trusted person of interest by New York State, and they have to go through a vetting process. So you can't bring on somebody who maybe was from Massachusetts that didn't want to spend $5 million to apply for a license, and then they try to like a straw buyer or a straw person. That's not allowed. We certainly wouldn't allow it. We wouldn't let somebody come in at 9% who was unscrupulous or who wasn't trying, doing the right thing. Anybody that we would accept as an investor has to A, align with our principles, and B, understand that we're running this business. We're going to do it with the utmost amount of respect. And if they're not a part of it, then we don't want their money. And we do have the capability to fund almost all of it ourselves, if so be. But we like working with a partner.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for the question.
Sir?
Sure.
Sure. Well, thank you.
Of course.
You're creating a destination.
Yes, sir.
I like the fact that it's standalone,
Happy.
and I wish you all the luck with the planning board.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I do. I've got a couple of questions for you.
Yes, sir.
So I was similar to Omar. I was when it had the ownership question, but what's the initial capital outlay? Do you estimate?
It's about 450,000 for the renovations.
Right.
And our initial inventory order is probably north of 150,000, but we can go on terms for that.
Okay,
We
got
can
it.
do
All right. So that's actually less than I thought it would be.
Okay, great.
Just-
Well, like I said, that's my cousin. And, we've known each other my whole life.
Now,
Or
now,
his whole
now,
life,
now
my
you
whole
will
life.
have to go through the planning and the building board.
Yes.
So I'd add 50% to your number just to be as a starting point.
Fair. I think he did that already.
No. 10 or 20, right? So-
Oh, shit.
I'm closer.
I got
All right.
really hit.
So the other piece is from a retail so in terms of the retail operations, right? I heard a couple of different things that I'd like, and if you all will indulge me. Like I counted 3 self-service, 5 tablets.
Yeah.
In 3 registers.
3 to 4 registers. Yeah.
Right.
We're
So
trying to figure out the
that's
space.
10 checkouts at a time. How many people at a time are you going to let into this property?
We have to check to see what the rules are. But what we want to do is create an opportunity where we'll have one self-checkout in the foyer. So a lot of people want to come in, they know what they want to bring it up and they want to walk in, pay and then leave. Some people are, very new, or maybe they're shy, or maybe they've never used cannabis before. They just have no idea and they want to speak to a bud tender. So whatever, again, strictly based on whatever planning allows for, whatever the occupancy is, we would work within those numbers.
Well, part of the reason for me is like if you have 10 different transactions going on at the same time, you have a significant number of people going
It
back to
wouldn't be
get.
10, I'm sorry. So the way it works is somebody comes in, they scan their ID, then they're led into the space. They work with a bud tender, that person will then work on the tablet. Everybody has to go to the register to check out. So it's not like 10 people being helped at the same time.
Okay, so each of those isn't a specific point of sale
no,
checkout
no.
location.
The 5 tablets are strictly for their customer facing, like the employee holds them and then shows them their graphic. It's got like a very graphic.
Okay.
interface.
Not a register.
Yeah, it's not a
Right.
register. It's not a register. That's what I was trying to
Oh, I'm
like,
sorry, yeah.
because you said self-checkout and then you've got a bunch.
Self-checkout, yes, I'm sorry.
They can only have
I
that
chose
set
my
of
words.
people
poorly.
in
That's where I was going. That's where I was getting.
Self-checkout in the
about
sense
all
that,
this.
let's call it a self-order, and then they still have to go in the back.
Okay,
show
all
their ID
right,
again,
that's
and then
much,
accept.
much, okay,
Okay.
that's.
And
much
then with
helpful.
regard also like something that I didn't mention earlier is, we have cashless ATM. We will also have a regular ATM. So we're trying to minimize our cash because cash can
I
create.
thought you
problems.
weren't, what is it, credit cards or?
You're not
cash?
allowed to take credit cards.
Okay.
Right, but you are allowed to
'Cause
take
that's the
debit and
federal
you are
law.
allowed to do cashless ATM.
Nothing
Or you
else
could
to
do an
think.
ATM. We're gonna have an ATM actually with like a Apple Pay reader on there, like a near field communication. So that way
Okay.
people could take money out if they want to. And then with regard to our cash, we're gonna have like a Brinks type of armored car service,
That's fine.
varying times, varying days. And then they'll only utilize our back entrance. So that way somebody can't keep an eye on us. Say, oh, Tuesday at 3, the guy shows up with cash.
Got it.
That'll be like random times.
So my other question is I kind of got the sense from the presentation that one of you're going to have multiple channels to the customers. So you're going to have delivery,
Yes.
You're gonna have buy online, pick up in stores, Bob says,
Correct.
right? And you're gonna have walk-ins.
Yes.
So buy online, pick up in store, I don't want to use the acronyms. Does the validation of the individual's age and everything, does that happen online or online and
Both.
okay, so
Yeah,
it's
it'll
both.
happen online, but then no product leaves our store until someone showed us an ID and they're of age.
Got it. So then
Yeah, and if
the
not,
flip side of that is, okay, you're buying online and delivery.
Same thing.
Like, tell me about the security in the delivery mechanism there.
Okay,
Because I saw that in
Yeah, it's-
Boston for the first time, and so that one for me is a little interesting.
So the security, it's built into the CRM, it's built into the tracking software, the point of sale that'll be on their device. With regard to the actual product, it gets put in safe, and that safe is locked in the trunk. So there's no product just on the car seat. It's a very safe transaction. And like I said, only items that are sold have to be 20% of the inventory in the car. So you can't just drive around.
That's not what you're
Ton of stuff
asking,
on
is it? Are you asking something else? Are you asking how to identify the person on the?
Well,
outside?
yeah, that's where I'm going. One is, how do you identify and validate
Oh,
the
to make
person?
sure
on
that the right
other end?
person is getting it?
Yeah.
Oh, check their ID.
And that they're over 21.
Do you scan it?
Of course, yeah.
It's scanned,
everything-
okay,
Oh, yes,
this-
absolutely.
Well, are the cars marked?
I'm sorry?
Are the
No,
cars
have to-
branded?
No, the cars cannot be. They have to be like a nondescript. You can't have any sort of ostentatious car, like can't drive around a cyber truck. Everyone's like, oh, the guy's a cyber truck. It's gonna be like a very, subdued. We're not allowed to have anything crazy.
I'm not
Can't have our
driving a Prius,
logos
though.
on the side of it.
Okay, no, I was just,
No, it's a great question. I'm glad that you asked. Yeah, I actually meant to mention that. Thank you as well.
Well,
Thank you.
Of course.
that's on
Thank you for the
them.
question.
They get held up, it's on them, but I think you were asking, I mean, universities have had a lot of, right, Massachusetts, Colorado, they're, you got 18-year-olds basically.
Well, like,
And that's whoever's watching this and will be watching this will be sitting here saying, how do you prevent, people under 21 from ordering and, how do you know that they're not doing that? But I could argue that for lots of products and lots of things. It's on you guys.
well, I will also like to, just remind that for 13 years, we've had a liquor license and we've never once had an issue. So that to us is, it's critical. And like I also said, that we're parents and we don't want this stuff getting in our children's hands, and we're not going to let it get in anyone, unless they are of age and verified.
Are you done? Great. So a lot of my questions were asked and answered. The ownership is important. Is your license transferable?
Every New York State license is transferable. The cannabis license itself, retail. My understanding, and I can confirm with my attorney, and I can get back to the board, but my understanding is that it is. I don't believe that there's a time frame as to, when it could be sold, but if a license were to be sold, it also has to go through like the entire vetting process from
Right.
beginning to end.
Okay.
I will also say that we have no intention of selling it.
Nobody ever does.
No.
I'm just telling you that everybody that comes in front of us has never any intention of selling.
course.
It's all them and they all do.
Well, we've
So
already
the
offered
only,
it.
and we have no control once that process happens.
Sure.
So the question is very specific, but I'm assuming it's like the New York State liquor where you can't, it's not just transferable. You actually have to go through the whole
They have to be
process.
totally.
It's a
vetted.
very similar process. I
Yeah.
mean, realtors walk in here all the time, but they're all literally the same presentation.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they get their permits, they flip. So I'm just trying to understand how that works. In this business, I mean, it's a very expensive business to start.
Yes.
This is not, it's no minor league play here. This is hundreds of thousands of dollars of your
Yeah.
money. And it sounds like you're self-funding. At least that's what you said on record, that you are self-funding.
We have the ability to self-fund it, but we are looking to take on investors.
Investors.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It is just like Dana White had said, it's a property that has been sitting empty a really long, it's a nice property, but really long time. And so it's nice that you're doing, and just a correction for the public record, the taxes you refer to actually don't all go to the village. They go to the village, 50% village, 50% town, just to get the right municipalities on
Okay.
record. It's not your issue. It's just,
Sure.
everything gets recorded. People look at the recorded meetings. I just want to be clear about some of the semantics, if you will. It's
Sure.
nothing to do with you.
Of course.
And like everybody else, I think you're getting a yes, nod. I haven't heard anybody say no to this. I think everybody actually wished you luck, and we want businesses to do well. This is a perfectly legal business. We want, good characters to come in here and, run good businesses. Maddie, I was gonna ask you if you have anything else to add. I was gonna ask Stuart, do you have more
I have one
questions?
more question.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I forgot to ask this the first time through. What's your target ring what's your target ring per transaction?
The average right now is about $99 per transaction.
We'll call it 100.
Call it on.
Nothing cheap.
Big whole number. Yeah.
Well, no, it just gives me a sense of traffic, right? Because if the 5-year estimate is if it's $25,000 a day is your estimate, it says 250, right? So no,
Yeah, about 200. Yeah, 200.
that just gives me a sense of
It's a-
traffic.
Yeah.
That gives me a sense of traffic,
Sure.
right? So
It's a big outlay. We had all the, Pat Yost is a relatively new trustee. It's his second month, but he's been watching us. We had lots of conversation about this, how expensive it is to start,
Very.
the legality around it, the cameras, the age, the parking, the et cetera, how, well, most people think it's young people. The truth is a lot of these prices, we had a lot of conversation, is not. It's a lot of baby boomers for all sorts of reasons. None of that actually matters. I mean, that's, for you to decide whether you can make a living on this, not for us. But we want to make sure that the folks that come in front of us are legitimate, that they have the wherewithal and the finances, because
absolutely.
we don't want it to fail. We want it to succeed. You have something to add, footnotes, et cetera?
I was just going to talk about next steps. I'm not sure if Stuart has anything
Okay,
else. that he
Stuart,
wants
do
to
you
raise.
have, that was my next, and Chief, do you have any commentary here? I go around just so everybody
course,
can be
yeah.
involved, otherwise,
Just really from a law enforcement standpoint, it'd be nice to actually have a business of this nature that's fully legit, so.
Yeah. We would be. And I just wanted to make one additional point. We were offered
That is a
Well-
tagline you should be putting in your presentation.
a legit business. Fully legit.
No, we got it. Compared to what you have to deal with, yes.
Where we're from, we had a lot of those illegal smoke shops got shut down. Like New York State came in and boarded them up, and they still got product in there and they can't get into it. So
Yeah,
there was a lot of-
well, we wish New York State would do more of that
So do we.
every day. And
Definitely.
I think that's why you had some issues with the shopping centers like the Arcadian. They're great people.
Yeah.
Their businesses, a lot of those are doing well. They've had negative experiences, and I'm not picking on them. They just have to be in my community. I'm sure it's, and food trucks that sell
Yep.
this, and it goes on and on and on. And it's, but like everything new, there's a time that
Sure.
we have to
It's a
adjust,
paradigm
and
shift,
this is
right?
still new,
Yeah,
so it's
absolutely.
all
I
good.
agree.
Next steps, please share with us.
Next steps, we're getting to be old hat at this. So the next step for the board specifically, it sounds like we don't have any specific concerns we want to point out. We're happy with the location, the business plan that we've seen.
Yeah.
So we will be writing a letter to OCM for the board's review. We'll draft it and send it around, make sure you don't have any changes. We're well within the 60 days we have to make a response, to put that on record. So we have a little bit of time. And then for you folks, we can connect you with our land use council and our planning staff
Right.
to get started so that we can get you in front of the land use boards and hopefully see you very soon.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
for the presentation. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
next.
Good night. Okay.
Thank you.
Next
Next.
up, we have some cabaret licenses for approval. So we have Westchester Collaborative Theater, the Boathouse La Tusa, and Tierras Tropicales.
Stuart, you're on.
Good evening, and we have Captain Donahue via Zoom.
Good evening.
We'll do these one at a time. We'll start first with the Westchester Collaborative Theater. This establishment has asked for a cabaret license and refreshment license. They, at this time, do not have a liquor license. They are in the process of applying for a liquor license. So any cabaret license that would be approved by this board at this time would solely be for soft drinks. When and if they get a full liquor license from the state of New York, that license can then be, the cabaret license can
Okay.
be changed. They did have a one-day license for an event on February 1st. They are eligible to get additional one-day licenses, but it is not at all, they apparently are looking to get full licenses, a license, but there's a question whether not-for-profits can actually get an SLA license. So that's something that.
So if
are-
they never get one, or they don't get one in the next year,
They
this
would-
is just a license to sell Coca-Cola? What is it a license for then?
Soft drinks, coffee, and tea.
But you
That's
don't
what-
need a cabaret license for that, do you?
Yes, you do.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
For them, okay.
It would be, the price is slightly different. If it's only soft drinks, it's 150 as
Okay.
compared to the soft drinks, wine and beer, which is 300. So although their application does call for the ability that they would be selling alcohol, that of course is dependent upon the state liquor authority. As of today, there is no pending application, but
Right.
my understanding, as I said, is that that's something that they are working on. If they do get a temporary liquor license, then we would work with them with regard to the particular license that they get. But again, the only temporary license so far was one that occurred for an event on February the 1st.
Somebody, just Stuart, make sure that Alan understands this, that
We're dealing with both Mr. Lepman, but more importantly, with Elizabeth Clampert, who's an attorney, who's the vice president, who also has dealt with other not-for-profits. So she and I
Okay.
have spoken. She's also spoken with the village clerk. So
okay,
she is very familiar with what's going on.
right.
They're looking, in terms of days of operation, it would be Friday and Saturday from 7 PM to 10:30 PM, which is certainly within the window that this board has. And that's basically it. Captain, anything with regard to this one?
No, our department we've had no negative interactions with that group.
They also rent the space out for a month at a time and stuff, so we just have to understand. It doesn't interest me, but you should know that they better, I don't understand how that works either, but I'm sure there's a system in place. Okay, are we doing one at a time, or are we just gonna go through all four of them and then decide? What are we doing? What's your?
So
what do
there's
you
an
wanna do?
adjustment to their times they're requesting, right?
Well, their time is 7 to 10:30 PM.
Who am I looking at? Do I have somebody else up here?
I'm not sure who you're looking at. I'm
We don't
looking
know
at Westchester Collaborative.
Westchester Collaborative. Are you looking at La Tusa?
Oh, second one. Okay.
It's the
My
second
mis-
one. Okay, I
So-
think we're good,
Okay,
right?
so-
Folks,
There we go.
thumbs up.
We can have a resolution for them. Next, if we can, I'd like to just do Up the River Restaurant, which is the boathouse. Uh,
Oh,
We got both of their new liquor licenses, both for the outdoor as well as for indoors. And so those were recently received. They are looking for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 5 PM till midnight, and Sunday, 3 PM till 11 PM. Same entertainment as before, which would be bands, DJ for special events, karaoke. They did have a license, as you know, in the past. And they've applied early this year, which we thank them for. And they did provide us with, as I said, the liquor licenses, both for their outdoor area as well as for indoor.
so this is for both. Same
This would be for
thing,
both.
same rules for both. Great.
Mhm.
Anybody have issues with this, Captain?
No, ma'am, all good.
Okay,
So
anybody?
I'm just, the same question I'm gonna pose like I did with the Elks Club. Cause they have the outside bar. This will cover
This will
indoor.
cover specifically because we have a license now for the outside bar.
Okay.
Which we did not have with
They
the Elks
didn't do
Club.
that in the past.
Right.
We're getting better. Every year it's better.
Okay, next,
Time.
Tierras Tropicalis.
Mhm.
We do have representatives from Tierras Tropicalis here. And Captain, let me just say one or two things before. I know you have a position with regard to this particular location. Previously, there had been a denial from this board with regard to Tierras Tropicalis. We have been in contact with their counsel who is here. They have essentially provided us with a plan as to what they're going to do with regard to the operations. They have revised their method of operation. They will have security officers there. The folks there have taken what's called TIPS training, which is basically how you serve people and when you know that people have been overserved. And if there are any questions, as I said, their counsel is here, plus Mr. Kazada, are both here. So if there are any questions from them with regard to this. But Captain, I know you have some issues, so why don't you let the board know those?
Yeah, I think that this location has had minor issues in the past. That said, we've had long conversations with ownership, and in general, when dealing with these establishments, nightlife establishments, for lack of a better term, they tend to be categorized into two different groups. One that take constructive criticism, try to follow rules and regulations, try to follow the liquor authority guidelines, and then those that seem to sort of go against the grain and try to get away with doing things that are not permitted by law. I would categorize Tierras Tropicales as being in the former, and I do believe that their ownership is trying to run a good business, and as the mayor has said in the past, trying to be good neighbors. I recently went on foot patrol down Croton Avenue and Main Street, and stopped in because there was some ice on the sidewalk, and Claudio, the owner, came right out, and before I could even get out of sight of the location, he was putting down salt to try to alleviate ice in front of the business. So, I do believe that location is trying to comply. We've seen a good track record of late, and again, there's been no, I don't believe any intentional disobedience of any rules or regulations. If anything, it was maybe at some point some misunderstanding or lack of understanding of the law, and that's where that tips training can be very valuable in teaching the staff how not to overserve and the like. So, I'm actually in favor of this one.
And just so the board is aware, they are looking for Friday and Saturday, 9 PM to 1 AM. And a few things to note, they have provided what is basically an updated security vision plan, which will be part of the TIPS training that I mentioned. Their folks will be trained to obtain correct and legal identification of patrons, to see if a patron is visibly intoxicated. There'll be a camera system with multiple cameras on premises. In terms of the method of operation, they're looking for both live music, DJ, jukebox, and karaoke. And so that's Tierras Tropicales.
Great.
Everybody
you-
okay with that?
Good.
Well, they're here. You have
Okay.
questions?
No, I'm good.
Oh, you're good. Well, you'll have to come to the microphone, sir.
This is Attorney James Timko, who represents Tierras Tropicales.
Great.
Timko, Moses, Robbins, White Plains.
Sir,
Yes.
we're just gonna ask questions. We don't need a whole thing. No disrespect. It's only if the
course.
board has questions.
Anyway.
And I'm sure as a lawyer, you appreciate not needing to speak more than you have
My
to.
client is appreciating getting me out of here before the bill comes.
I'm sure he does. So can you tell me about the ownership of this bar, please?
I can. It's owned by Claudio Quesada. He's been involved in this business for 27 years. He became the sole owner and proprietor in 2017, and he works there with his family member. The staff that's working there consists of 3 family members, himself, his brother, and sister, and then 2 hired employees. So he's the
Okay.
sole owner and member of the LLC.
So he has 100% ownership.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Great. Does anybody have any questions? So I'm probably speaking for the board. We don't get this often. We've had issues, as I think you know, and I think your client knows, with some of the bars in our community. But I will say that this may be the first time that Captain Donahue has actually made this recommendation. And I'm going to take that very seriously, because the first time I've heard him do that, and for him to do that means that he seriously believes that there's an effort here. I will tell you that I hope your client, does he speak English or?
Limited, but I can explain to what you're saying.
Okay. Welcome. Well, we also have Spanish speaking folks
Yes.
here, but hello. I think I've actually seen you around the so you'll explain, I'm not going to repeat,
yeah.
but I will say that it is my hope that the police will always be welcome there, and that we keep this good faith, and that we will be proven correct. Because the board looks to me like everybody is saying it's okay, because I haven't heard otherwise. Am I correct about that? Okay, so you're getting I view this as good faith on both parties, meaning that The police will be coming like they do to all the bars in the area. And I hope that this is, just like the business before. I wish you lots of success for you and your family. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, folks.
Next.
The last one is La Tusa Bar Restaurant, and Mr. Juan Quezada is here this evening. La Tusa Bar Restaurant Chief, Captain, I'll just say a few things and then I'll turn it over to you. They are seeking a cabaret license for wine and beer. And that's because of the distance to the high school, they cannot get a liquor license. They can only serve wine and beer.
Oh, I was just
So,
there today. Okay.
so,
I was in that area, right? Okay.
so that goes with them. They are looking, and obviously the times would have to be changed because they're looking from 10 a.m. until 2 a.m., which actually I believe is also the hours of operation, but the cabaret could not obviously be before noon, and it would have to end at either midnight or 1 a.m., depending on the particular day of the week. They're looking for recorded music and karaoke. Captain, why don't I turn it over to you, since I know you have some comments on this one.
Captain?
Yeah, unfortunately, this one I would categorize probably more in the second half or the latter type of business that I described earlier. They had a number of problems in the past, including operating as a cabaret without license. So, that causes some concerns for me that a business would willfully, violate local ordinance and only attempt after they are found to be in violation to be attempting to become in compliance. Also, we had a number of altercations at that location that caused some concern. So I would like to see certainly at very least a longer track record of operating without any kind of violence or criminal activity before they're permitted additional privileges that would potentially lead to additional problems. Also, the close proximity to the high school and the application that at the time that I viewed it, there were permit application to the state completely left out the fact that the high school was there on their map. I would say that their track record, though short, has not really been stellar. So I would recommend not permitting a cabaret at this time.
Okay, I'm gonna open it up for some questions from the captain, because, now we're getting in the other way, and we always take the police very seriously. I now remember this actual whole story. Yes. Anybody have questions or comments? Dana? Gentlemen? Okay. And you're the owners? Okay. Well, come on up.
Juan Quezada.
I'm good, thank you. And do you live here in Austining, or?
Yeah, I used to live here in Austin for like 12 years, but I
Okay.
just moved up to Corley.
Oh, very nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm familiar. I just remembered. So you heard what the captain said. You should know that we take it seriously. I don't know which way the board is leaning. So does anybody want to give me a hint here?
For me, I'd love to hear.
Okay, great. So you heard what the captain had to say. If you could respond to
Yes.
some of that, that would be
Yeah.
great.
I would just, like to request Stuart, see when if you could help me out, because we just started operating back in 2021, and I remember since the beginning we did apply for a cabaret license and we did get approved. So I'm trying to figure out when is that timeline that we operated without a cabaret and that we did not follow like any.
I think, Mr. Quezada, that was last year, if I am not mistaken.
Yeah,
There was an application. I think it was denied last year. That I'm fairly certain of. I know that there were issues, and I can let the board know with regard to the state liquor authority. There were periods in the past when the licenses, they were temporary at that time, were lifted by the state liquor authority. One of them did deal with the fact that the establishment had a liquor license and had not indicated on its application that in fact it was within 200 feet of the entrance to OHS, which is why now your application solely relates to beer and wine.
Right.
And in fact, I do have their current application because I think they're on I think you have a license now, I think the end of June, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken. And so it's waiting to be extended. And I have actually a copy of the current application that's pending with the State Liquor Authority. It does indicate that they will be having corporate security. They will also be doing the TIPS training, which is the same thing that we mentioned before with Tierras Tropicales. And that's pending there. But again, with regard to the denial, with regard to the violation for no cabaret, that was, I believe, last year. I know that there was a denial by this board of a cabaret license. And that's what resulted in that finding at that particular time.
So when did you open the business?
I think we were open by 2022.
So in
Like,
22 and 23, if you applied in 24, then I think the answer to your question is that in 22 and 20, I mean, you must know when you opened the business, right?
I'm sorry, 21, that's when we.
Right.
opened,
So in
like,
21, 22 and 23, you operated, to answer your question, which is that you were asking, when did you operate without? Well, one would think that's when you operated without, because it isn't, it's not his job or the police job to tell you how to run your business.
Oh, yes.
You're
yeah.
supposed to know that when you serve liquor, and I think literally every person knows
Yes.
this, that when you serve liquor of any kind, there are licenses involved. And so to not have one means, I think, what's happening
No,
here, and
I-
somebody will correct me, but it sounds like that's what was happening.
Well, he
I
never,
also had a liquor
Yeah,
license.
yeah, he
I
always had a
never-
liquor license. What happened was they were temporary licenses.
Okay.
And because of actions that the SLA found, and Captain, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they pulled the temporary licenses.
The state liquor
The
authority. so
State
it's
Liquor
not the
Authority did. So
village,
that's
right.
different than our cabaret license. The State Liquor Authority actually pulled the
your
licenses
license.
for
Yeah, but,
two different reasons.
when they pulled the license, like basically last year, we were closed almost for the whole year
Mhm.
because, you know, we were not getting any businesses since we didn't have a liquor license or a beer and wine license. So we didn't have people coming in. So we were basically closed out
Right.
for almost the whole year until the end of December. That's when we finally got our beer and wine back. So we decided to get up and running
Mhm.
again. So that's why we applied for
But that's because the state took the license away.
yes,
correct?
yes,
Because-
it took
okay.
it away because the state got a referral saying that we were within 200 feet of the.
You're across the street from the high school.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you know, when you apply through the state, through the SLA, like they have like this proximity where you put in the address that you're interested in with a business. And it tells you right away, either you're on the green or you're on the red. So that's why the lady that did the license for me, you know, it was the first time doing something like this for myself. So we pay somebody and, you know, she
Mhm.
did the license for us, so.
I'd like to add also that there is a diagram required where the applicant provides a diagram of the neighborhood to sort of give the state a general idea of the area where the establishment is going to be operating. And the property of the high school was just left blank. So it was clear that there were businesses over here and here's a structure and a church or what have you. But then the property of the high school was just left as a square. So there was a little bit of a lack of forthcoming information. And I think that's what led to their revocation of the license.
State
So
liquor
if I-
authority- Yeah, go ahead.
So what I'm looking at is this permit that expires in June. It says temporary retail, but it also states that to stock and sell beverages, alcoholic beverages. Is this,
It's only beer and wine.
It's only beer and wine.
It's only beer and wine.
For some reason, like before used to say only beer and wine
Mhm.
plus hard cider. But for some reason now they just, you know, because when he came in, there was confusion also about with Susan. She was asking me why am I getting a full license? And you know, we called it in and they were like, no, it's only beer and wine and hard cider.
If you check the State Liquor Authority
Yes,
site,
it,
there's a code number and that code number corresponds to beer, wine and cider. It does not there's no liquor license that was granted with this.
Okay, so Captain, what else is in addition? Yeah,
Captain, what is a V&T investigation?
A V&T investigation is essentially a car stop. So sometimes our officers will stop a vehicle for a traffic investigation, and they will use a particular business or particular location as a, as they're calling out the stop. So that would not relate to that business. But if you said I'm stopping a car in front of 16 Croton Avenue, it would still show up in the blotter, even though it's not obviously in that building.
They're in a high traffic intersection. I mean, they're like a couple hundred yards. They're right past Lucy's Pizza on the right, so.
Right. So if an officer said I'm pulling
A
over
lot
a
of
car in
cars
front of
in front.
Latusa, it would still show up in their blotter list, even though obviously they're not stopping a car on the, in the restaurant.
So what do you intend to do to have less incidents? You have security, you'll have
Well,
training for
Yeah,
serving?
we, like, I'm just trying to like understand like what, like which events we had were, I don't ever remember being there because I was there like every day. I remember having an event where I had to call the cops, say, listen, I have a problem at the bar, please come. Like, I'm being totally honest. I know there's a couple of, there were 2 fights that broke out, but people leave my bar and like a fight breaks out of the corner. Like, I have no control over that. Like, as much as I could, like, tell people, come on, I'll go drop you home. Like, that's not under my responsibility, I don't think, because everybody that goes, it's overage.
I would beg to differ that is absolutely the responsibility of a bar owner, not only for the bar itself or the restaurant, but also the property in front and adjacent to. That is absolutely the responsibility, and no one else's, to maintain that area. And in fact, there is a specific section, a disorderly premise, that is cited when a loss of control happens. So, this is something that we've faced many times in the past. And it is absolutely 100% on the bar or the location, restaurant, to maintain order in that area, and no one else's. And to say that you can wash your hands of that because it happened outside or you didn't see it coming, I would say is rather false.
I'm not trying to wash my hands. I'm just, if it happens like the corner where Lucy's Pizza is, like I can't. Like,
right. If Lucy's Pizza had a fight
Okay,
outside, they
gentlemen,
would own it.
I get this. Here's the thing. Is this your first bar that is this your first place
Yes.
that sells liquor? This is your first one.
Yes.
Do you have others?
Well, I do electrical work. I have an electrical business also.
You have other businesses, but you have other
No,
businesses like this.
No, this is the only one that I have.
So I think what the captain is saying is, when you sell liquor, as you can see with the cannabis, liquor is not a dress shop. This is a serious business of alcohol, and you do have a responsibility. People leave your bar, you actually are responsible for them even once they leave your bar. It's actually part of running this type of business late into the night. And when people come in here and say, somebody else filled out the paperwork, it doesn't matter that somebody else filled out the paperwork. It's like you're responsible. People that own these kind of business, every business has its pros and cons, and this is the con here. This is the tough gig of running a bar. It isn't a retail shop. That is one of the responsibilities, and it's actually disconcerting that and I can understand the captain's frustration that you're washing your hand of it, because you are responsible for the people that serve, underserved,
Yes.
overserved, the ages of the people when they leave, if they get into a car, it actually is your responsibility, and you need to know that. Otherwise, that's very disconcerting. And it's unfortunately not okay to say, I just didn't know. That actually doesn't work. So this is a little tricky. I don't know if people have more questions or less. I have a question about June. So his license running out in June?
Yes,
So how long is the cabaret? How long is this
the
license for?
cabaret would be a year license. However, just so the board is aware,
Mhm.
both the clerk's office and I diary when the licenses are due to expire. If any of the licenses that you have approved this year are in fact expiring this year,
Mhm.
generally within like 2 weeks before that, I go onto the SLA site. Best example is the Boathouse, to see what the status is.
Right.
And the SLA site indicated that they had been granted a new license. So I would see that. If I don't see that, or I don't see a pending application or anything like that, we would advise the person that as of that day, when it expires, all you're going to be able to do is serve soft drinks. And we would notify the police so that they would be aware of it. So that's basically what we do. And we require that they provide us with the updated license. So we know which licenses expire in 2025. They're now into 2026 with many of the licenses as well. But we know when that is and we diary it so we can follow up with those applicants.
All right, so we need to make some decision here, so. Yeah,
Hold on, I got.
So have your bartenders completed the tips training yet?
Yes, I actually used to have like, three, like, I don't think I ever had a problem with over serving or over pouring. Like,
Just have all your bartenders received the tips training?
yes.
Can you
yeah,
provide the certificates? Because I
Yeah.
didn't see those in the application.
Yes, well, that was from basically almost a year and a half ago when I used to have the bartenders. But now, like, we basically just serving beer and wine. And
Still should have tips training because it's still alcohol.
I understand, yes.
Okay,
All right.
so it'd be good, like,
Okay.
that'd be something I would like to see. Yeah, your current ones don't.
No. no.
Okay, so for me, that'd be something like that I would like to see
We could, yes,
done.
we'll do that.
Yep.
So you're currently open serving beer and wine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
I'm gonna presume that you're gonna reapply for a license before June for your liquor license.
Yes,
So we've,
beer
excuse
and
me,
wine.
we've done this in the past. Good example was Tropicalis, who's here. They've been denied. They've seemed to clean up their act. So I'm in favor of suspending it till June and look at the blotter and see if he's worked along with OPD and he's done the right thing and done everything right, and come back to us in June, because you're gonna be getting a new license. And just clean up whatever you think is your responsibility or not, and have conversations with the captain. And I'm willing to talk to you again in June about issuing the cabaret license. Well, May, yeah, whatever it is. But we wanna see the blotters. Hopefully there's no blotter. So,
folks to my right.
you understand what I said, right?
Yes.
Okay,
I get it, I get it.
thank you.
Well, a lot of the stuff on this blotter is just because it happened in front of somebody got pulled over. I mean, a lot of these are just because they were pulled over in front of them. I would tend to say yes only if the training is done for serving and there is a commitment to security and a commitment to keeping your patrons safe, and not over serving. And if they get in a fight, well, but that is your responsibility is what happens with your patrons even after they leave to some extent. If someone gets in a car drunk and drives, I think the bar can be liable. Am I right? Is that true?
Yes.
The answer is
Okay.
yes.
So just good to know, right?
Yes.
I remember going there right when you opened. You had a full bar.
We saw a full bar.
Yeah, I remember that. It was good.
It's a
Mojitos.
nice
yeah,
place.
Yeah.
It's a nice place.
So I'm not a no, but I'm like yeah, maybe, Huh?
Maybe's actually not.
It's maybe a no?
We need a no.
We need a yes or a no.
Yes, we don't. do
Oh.
maybes. I'd like to do maybe's.
I don't know. I'd be willing to consider it.
I'm with Bob. I generally want to see as many businesses succeed in Ossining as possible, and understanding the position that you are in. Between, it is now February, we're talking about May. It's not, a year, which we've said to others, come back next year. Try the whole year, and then we'll try again next year. There, I think, is enough here that we can, what I specifically would be looking for, certainly the tips training, but more than anything, I think is disposition, right? What I would be looking for is saying, I want as much as possible to work with the police department in the village to make sure that everything is the way it needs to be so that I'm a positive contributor to the Austin community, which I believe you are and want to be. So what I would be looking for is not only the blotter, not only the tips training, but also if you can proactively go to the police and say, hey, what can I do between now and May to ensure that I'm in the best position possible to start to build that momentum? If you were to have that conversation and then do whatever it is that they recommend, that to me would be a huge green flag and would enthusiastically make me say yes then.
Okay, so, everything's been said that I would say. I don't need to be redundant. And so I think you have the vote, because what I'm hearing is 1, 2, 3, 4.5. Or 4 2/3.
4 and a maybe.
A delay for 2 to 3 more.
Well, what it
months,
sounds
or it
like,
would be
right.
It would be reconsidered.
The
based
li,
on
well, the
conversation.
license, the current license expires on June the 3rd. So my recommendation would be to bring it back for a May work session.
Yeah.
And at that
That's
point, we
what I said
can,
that. Yeah.
we can do that, Mr.
And-
Quezada. So we'll come back in May. We'll come back, we'll get information from Captain Donahue, and we'll see where we are at that point, and then the board can make a determination.
Right. So just one more thing, I don't want you to misunderstand me. I'd love not more than you see you succeed and run a respectful business. Just as my colleague, the deputy mayor said. So, you have some time to put it all together and we'll see you in May.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can we delay this, the climate vulnerability? It's 10:10.
I'll give a very brief overview and let you know why we kind of can and kind of can't. The management benefit, we can put off another 2 weeks. I don't think
Okay,
there's
let's do
any.
that.
So we can skip that one. But very quickly, the climate vulnerability assessment and adaptation plan needs to be adopted by this board by the end of the month. So if it would be your preference to skip it tonight, we can, add this on, as a continuing business during the legislative meeting. I would just ask that the board, review it. It's sort of a dense document. And just, if there's anything that jumps out at you, you can, feel free to shoot me an email about comments you have. The window for public comment has closed. We got 3 very, very long, very thoughtful comments. So that was great. I'm not sure how much of that we're going to be able to integrate, but again, because this is a joint document between the town and village, we were going to need at least a couple of days to synthesize everybody's feedback and get everybody's
What is
sign
the-
off.
What do you need from the board on this?
So,
So that when we look at it seriously, we pull out what you need from us.
So what I need, because there is a soft commitment, but it's still a commitment, to continuing to do things in the village, operations and town operations to decrease greenhouse gas emissions. We've come up with several strategies that we've ranked, prioritized. We have some elements about cost, which, some of the feedback we've gotten is we need to detail that a little bit more, which I think we can do. But basically, that's what I need. Are the strategies something that this board can, again, in a soft way, commit to attempting in the next 10 years?
Okay. So, yeah, so
Mhm.
this is an intent and we'll try our best where feasible, where possible to do these things. The consequence of not doing them it's not necessarily consequential. It's just that we're making a commitment, a pledge to do our best to reduce greenhouse gases based on specific strategies that Maddie and our volunteers, the EAC, Green Ossing have worked
Right.
exhaustively on.
Many of which we're already doing, by the way.
we
So
do
it's
this every few years. This.
not quite. This is sort of an extension of the CAPI program
Okay.
that we went through. I will say, and I don't need to belabor it, many of the things that are in the plan are things we're already doing, just
Got it.
basically saying
Yeah.
either double down or continue.
And some of this goes towards grants, right? For both the village and the town.
Maybe.
Okay,
It
so
could-
now.
Yeah, not really.
Possibly, but at this point, it's
But
not a
mostly not.
consideration, but it's all good practices that save money and save greenhouse.
It's
gas,
hybrid
it's-
vehicles, it's rain
Okay,
gardens,
so
it's,
we could
stuff
read-
that,
we could Read this, and so what I'm asking is people to actually read this and then come back with like prioritize strategies, say they're all great, they're
Mhm.
all bad. whatever.
Yep, we just didn't want to drop it on you in a legislative
No,
meeting and say, please adopt this.
That I think
Do
is the
you
right
need
thing.
a
It's getting
resolution,
late.
though? Do you have time for the resolution to?
Uh,
adopt it?
we will have to do some footwork, but we'll manage it.
Okay.
Yep.
Because, you know, if the board reads it between now and next week, we could have a resolution pending. Or, you know, we could have a resolution
something.
on next week. We could still discuss it and answer questions, but depending on the magnitude of the questions and the comments.
We have 2 more meetings this month. We'll make it work.
Yeah,
Okay,
no, I
yep.
appreciate it. I'm sorry. I mean, we got a lot done tonight. We were like
Yeah,
around the
it's a lot.
globe with so many different topics. I think it's great.
You always save the best for last. I get
I
it.
do.
Don't worry.
Well, you'll go first next time, but you know, when you guys submit this, as you could have put yours first, but you let them put other things first, so it's all on you, actually. But I am trying to guess, I do try to get these meetings ended by about 11-ish for those of us that have a life after this. And not go on the way we used to, so, well, that includes you. So I think we're good. Everybody all right with that? To just table it? Okay, and is that it?
That's it.
The other
Okay.
agenda item we'll push off to the next work session. It's
Yes, I
pretty
appreciate that.
pretty clear. Yep.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Look, yeah, we've had some slow weeks. Now we're back to busy weeks. So do we have a motion? Adjourn to exec for personnel and law and legal, I think. So move.
Second.
Okay, folks,
Aye.
we are,
Aye.
thank you. 10:16, I think. We're gonna go into exec session. Have a nice evening. We will see everybody at the courthouse next Wednesday, 7:30. Thank you all.